everyone. Hello. Good morning. Good morning. Hi. I hope everyone's doing well today. Hope everyone's doing well today. And today we are going to be continuing with A Girl Named Disaster by Nancy Farmer. I'm a little tired today. It's still gloomy. It's still rainy in my little part of the world, and I'm starting to feel it. I'm a little tired. I have me a cup of tea today. Hi, Wasabi. Good morning. Good morning. I got some weird chat lag happening again. Hi, Sarah. Hello. Good morning. Good morning. I'm doing well today. A little tired. The weather has got me all gloomy. So, I'm just trying to keep myself peppy and happy. It's been raining for like the last few days, so it's starting to get to me just a little bit. But I'm okay. I'm okay for the most part. I feel fine. I have a little bit of the sniffles because it's that season where it starts getting colder and the air starts getting drier. Read this as soon as you see this. Yes. So, this, I see this. But yes, today we're going to continue reading off, A Girl Named Disaster by Nancy Farmer. Last time we left off, poor Normal, she got stung by a scorpion and got poisoned. Let's see how she's going to be able to handle it. Just got home from work. I hope you had a lovely day at work. I hope it was a good day. And I hope that you are enjoying the rest of your day. And I hope it's just as good. But yeah, so we're gonna get started. I got me some tea today. I'm hoping I'm not getting sick. I'm starting to feel a little under the weather because of this nonsense weather. So hopefully I'm not getting sick. That would suck. I'm gonna listen to the back. Okie dokie. I hope you enjoyed the story, friend. I hope you enjoyed the story. Yeah, okay, there's a bit of a delay. I know there's a bit of a delay. There's always a bit of a delay. But we're gonna continue on with the story. It's chilly today, like it's actively cold. I'm ready to just put on all my hoodies. Keep on goofy. Hi, buddy. What you doing? I think one of the assistants upstairs is cleaning out the attic. And Booby's hearing the sleeping noises, and he's like, "What's going on? What's happening?" Like cats do. I'm gonna shower and make dinner. Yum! What you gonna make for dinner? You're gonna keep gambling in San Andreas? Okay, so I hope you guys enjoyed the story. But, let's see. We're gonna continue from where we last left off. We're almost done with the books. I think we might be able to finish it today if we're lucky. So, ow! Hi, buddy. What's up? You ate already. I'm not gonna feed you again until a little later. Okay? Don't be a fat boy. Unless you just want attention, then come up here. Come. Up. That's a good boy. You knocked down all the teddy bears, so what are you gonna lay your head on, huh? Exactly. Good boy. Come on, buddy. You chill. Here, lay on Monty and chill out. I know you like Monty, so lay on him and chill out. Baby boy, you're gonna interrupt my stream again like you always do. Sweetie. Such a sweetie. Such a sweetheart. Oh. He just woke up because he was napping, and I was like, he was napping, he woke up while I was setting up for a stream, and then he just starts jumping up here and he starts giving me his little kisses. Because he gives me kisses in the morning. He just likes to rub his face all against me. His little snuggles and his little kisses. Big old mama's boy. Alright, so we're gonna continue from where last we left off. Chapter 26. Nama was afraid to climb down the ladder for 2 days. Her body wouldn't obey her. It jerked when she tried to remain still, and went limp when she tried to move. The first day she was so drowsy she didn't care. But then thirst drove her to pull herself up and hunt for the calabash of water she had stored. She had laid a good supply, fortunately, along with dried grasshoppers, fish, and fruit. She followed her bedding during the first day. That was unpleasant, but not as unpleasant as falling off the platform from sheer weakness would have been. Hi, buddy. Can I help you? I'm just gonna... I need you to sit, boo-boo. Sit. Good boy. Good boy. Now lay down. Lay down and relax, buddy. Okay? Lay down and relax. I don't need you being antsy today. Okay? Good boy. Good boy, relax. She felt her bedding during the first day. That was unpleasant, but not as unpleasant as falling off the platform from sheer weakness would have been. On the third morning, Namo threw the bedding out and ventured down the swaying rope ladder. She found the baboon troop still lingering by the stream. The water had subsided and would probably disappear by the end of the dry season. The animals no longer screamed when they saw her. They watched her with suspicion, but accepted her as part of their scenery as much as they accepted the impalas and vermin monkeys. She dabbled her feet in the stream. The baboons groomed one another in tranquil groups. Even Rumpy had maneuvered a half-grown female into combing his scruffy fur. It was nice having them around, Namo realized. She had come to depend on the cooing sounds, the lip smacking, the sudden shrieking panics. They were almost people. An older female, whom she called Donkeyberry, because of the creature's fondness for the fruit, sat surrounded by a respectful gathering of younger females and babies. The animals almost certainly dominated her group. Or was it her family? Namo didn't know. Donkeyberry got first choice of food, and she was the one who decided when the others would move. She was almost like a grandmother. Except that she had a young child, a mischievous baby who had just changed from the black fur of the newborn to brown, climbed over the respectable old baboon's head. Namo called the baby Shitheru, or Tag, after a game she had played in the village. Tag scampered everywhere. He and the other youngsters held endlessly running, jumping, and wrestling matches, with much shouting and even noises that sounded very much like laughter. No matter how gloomy Namo felt, her spirit lifted when she watched Tag. His favorite game was to climb out to the thinnest branch on a tree, dangle by one skinny arm, and then drop to the ground. Sometimes 3 or 4 youngsters went up the same tree, and then they followed one another off the branch, trying to land on the one who went before. Tag fearlessly climbed over Fat Cheeks, ignoring the rumbles a foot in the eye caused. Fat Cheeks hardly ever lost his temper, although occasionally he did and sent Tag shrieking to Donkeyberry's arms. The large male wasn't as gentle with brown babies as he was with the tinier black ones. I wonder if you tell each other stories, said Namo to the elderly baboon, who was dozing with her paw tucked under her knees. Donkeyberry blinked at Namo and went back to her nap. You certainly seem to talk. I wonder if you have relatives in other villages. Did a witch put a curse on Rumpy's foot? What do you do when someone gets sick? Do you have ngungas? But Donkeyberry paid no more attention to Namo's questions than she would to a chattering bird. Namo made her way to a stand of thatching grass to fetch more bedding. As usual, she scanned the dirt for prints. Hey, do not scratch my chair, sir. What do you need? Why are you restless now? Why are you restless, mister? Namo made her way to a stand of thatching grass to fetch more bedding. As usual, she scanned the dirt for prints. She knew that the island, my island, she said to herself, had once been a part of the mainland, before the ZIMBABWE rose. The animals had drifted here and they stayed in there as they pleased. Now they were trapped. Whatever had scrambled to this higher ground than the lake formed was here forever. By the merest chance, the most dangerous creatures had been excluded. Namo had found no evidence of lions or hyenas, buffaloes, or rhinoceroses. Hippos came ashore at night, but only in the marshes. They ignored the garden island, and anyhow, to be on the safe side, Namo had planted everything out of the reach. She had seen no wildebeests or zebras. She knew there were few jackals, bush pigs, honey badgers, and porcupines. She had seen the gaping holes anteaters carved into the sides of termite mounds. although she hadn't seen the creatures themselves. She had seen many common antelope, waterbuck, tweakers, bushbucks, reedbucks, and a few large kudu, whose harsh bark sometimes rang through the forest. As far Sorry, I'm watching Booby to make sure he doesn't do anything silly. Buddy, what you doing? What you doing? He wants attention, that's what it is. As far as the small animals went, there was a wealth of squirrels, cane rats, and hares, as well as the irresistible dassies, the tiny bush babies who squealed as they jumped from tree to tree after dark, and mongooses who slithered into holes as she approached. These were all, as far as Nama knew, that inhabited her island, and of course whatever had chopped off half of Rumpy's tail. Nama found nothing alarming in the dirt around the thatching grass. She quickly got out of breath slicing a few new beddings with the panga. She rested under a musasa tree and idly snaked a long piece of grass into a termite hole. It came up with several angry soldiers attached, and Namo expertly twisted off the abdomens and ate them. I really ought to water the garden, but I'm too tired, she said. I suppose it can wait another day. Ow! One of the termite soldiers had transferred his mandibles from grass to her finger. I should check the traps. There's still food in the lucky bean tree, though. The thought of walking anywhere was unappealing. She had a fit of dizziness whenever she stood up. Norma weirdly hoisted the bedding up to the platform. She burned the old grass, rekindling the dead fire with one of her precious matches. I mustn't let it go out again, she thought. She dragged a large green log over the flames. It smoldered and hissed. A thick smoke drifted over her platform, but it would burn slowly. As a bonus, the smoke would drive away mosquitoes. Namo spent the rest of the day idling by the stream. In the afternoon, the baboons returned as she laid on a conveniently flat rock to watch tag. He had discovered it was more comfortable to land on something softer than the ground. Namo held her breath as the baby dashed up a small tree and hurled himself onto the unsuspecting Fat Cheeks. Wah! Shouted Fat Cheeks as Tag bounced off his stomach. The baby ran for all he's worth to Donkeyberry, who gathered him into her arms and turned him over for a quick grooming session. When Tag was sure the large male had fallen asleep again, he repeated the performance. Namo was impressed with Fat Cheeks' patience. In spite of the creature's fearsome appearance, he was soft as potting clay when babies were concerned. Tag was far less confident about jumping on other males, though. Once he blundered into Rumpy, who bared his fangs and sent him into hysterics. Was Fat Cheeks patient because he was the chief and too dignified to react? Or was he, in fact, Tag's father? And if he was Tag's father, was he married to Donkeyberry? Nama found it all extremely interesting. She felt better the next morning, but she got a nasty surprise when she made a tour of the animal traps. Every single one had been broken. She had found fragments of bone and hair with shredded twine. Of course, a struggling animal would attract predators. She had been foolish to put off checking the snares. She studied the ground. Jackals had been present, and a honey badger, and a cat-like creature as well. It was too small for a leopard, too large for a wildcat. Nama had never been taught hunting, but her restless spirit had seized upon any information she overheard at the men's dade. She knew, therefore, that the only animal who could have made the prints were the serval or the caracal. The serval was a spotted animal about the size of a jackal. Uncle Kufa had given 2 serval skins to the Nganga in return for the headache medicine, and the Nganga had made himself a ceremonial hat. Some servals sometimes raided chicken pens, but generally they avoided people. The caracal was half again as large. The height of a goat. It was a much bolder creature. Servals lived on mice, but a caracal could bring down an impala. Namo had not heard of caracals attacking people, but their size and strength made it possible. She found droppings clouded with bone and hair. They could have belonged to either animal. The fish traps were empty, which wasn't surprising. The streams were almost dry. The bird lime had entangled a few qualias, and a mouse had been attracted by their fluttering. The garden on the little island was beginning to wither. The plants were stunted anyhow, with few flowers and less fruit. Namba didn't know whether the soil was bad or whether she had simply planted too late. She watered them morosely and returned to the moonquah log. It was as big as ever, with hardly a dent to show for all her scraping. Namba poked around the edge with a stick, but he knew after she had satisfied herself that no scorpions were lurking. She couldn't... Yes, buddy? Come on. Up. Sit with me, Bubba. Sit with me, Bubba. Come. You sit with me, my baby boy. Come, up. Up. Come. Come. Come, up. Come, sit with me. Sit with your mama. Come. Up. No? Okay. Come. He's so restless. I don't know what to do with him. He's like, I want attention, mama. Alright, buddy. You want attention? Come on. Come here. So chunky. Oh, God. Why are you so chunky, sir? Come here. Let's sit you down right here with your mama. Oh, that's a good boy. There we go. Here we go. I got him up here with me. Let him chill. Let him chill. That's my book. Yeah. That's my book. He's hungry for attention. Blood-starved fiend. Yeah. He's just a needy boy. No, he loves his mama so much that he's so needy. Let's see. I love you too, Boo. Oh, thank you for the kisses. Namo poked around the edge of the stick, but even after she had satisfied herself that no scorpions were lurking, she couldn't. Buddy. He's like rubbing himself against the book. Okay, what's up, bud? Come, sit. Yes, that's my book. I'm gonna. Yes. Sit, boo boo. He's standing in front of me right now. He's rubbing up against the mic. Yes, buddy. Come on, sit. Come on, sit. You do so well when you listen. Come on now. Okay, he's in front of my camera. Yes, buddy. Yes. I'm talking to the people on the internet. Yes, chill. That's a good boy. Oh, so good. Such a good boy. I'm so proud of you. Good boy. I got him. Also cat takeover. Yeah, pretty much. He likes attention. He likes the attention. he likes getting attention. He's just a big baby. A big baby. Oh, he's purring too, so he definitely wanted attention. Okay, I gotta read off to the side a little bit because he's just directly in front of me. No, let's see. Nala poked around the edge of the stick, but even after she had satisfied herself that no scorpions were lurking, she couldn't bring herself to carve. Instead, she cut down spotted aloe plants to make new traps. They were easy to prepare than musasa bark, although the twine they provided wasn't as strong. As she pounded the long, tough leaves with a club and rolled the fiber into string, she thought about the dry season. The wind off the lake grew hotter every day. Food was going to get scarce soon. I thought I'd be off this island by now, she grumbled. Well, if she couldn't leave, she would have to learn to hunt. Nama went over the weapons she had observed in the village. The boys were trained to use bows and arrows, slings, clubs, throwing sticks, and spears. Girls, of course, didn't need such skills. Nama examined the branches she had trimmed off the moonquah tree. When she had found one long and straight enough, she whittled the end with the panga. I wish I had metal for a spear point, she said. She remembered, though, that when Uncle Kufa made training spears for boys, he didn't waste precious iron. He hardened the tips with fire. He held the wood just so over the flame, turning it carefully so it wouldn't char. The results weren't as strong as a proper man's weapons, but the boys could still bring in small game. Namo gathered up her supplies and went back to the fire. She sharpened and fire-hardened and balanced the muko spear until it felt good in her hands. She practiced throwing it at a rabbit skin. It bounced off and clattered to the ground. After many attempts, she decided her arm simply wasn't strong enough. She would have to thrust it with the spear, using her weight to add force. Now what shall I hunt? She mused. A kudu? Ah, that would be a prize. Namo's mouth watered at the thought, but she knew such a large antelope was beyond her strength. An impala? Namo considered her thin arms and lowered her expectations. She had often observed the dassies as they foraged the grass. They hated sunlight and were too timid to venture out after dark, except during the full moon. This limited them to a very short feeding period at dusk. The rest of the time they crawled into crevices that were easily found by the streaks of dried urine staining the rocks. Namo waited by a little cul-de-sac on the way out of one of those crevices. As the afternoon shadows lengthened, the dassies muttered among themselves and eventually clustered at the entrance to their den. A large male edged forward to check for enemies. Namo sat perfectly still. I'm just another rock, she told the dassie, as he suspiciously sniffed the air. He crept out farther, then the huddled group inched behind him. Scuttle, scuttle, freeze. Scuttle, scuttle, freeze. He came down the path by the cul-de-sac. Namo lunged. His instinct was to race back, but she stood between him and the others. He leapt into the cul-de-sac. She had already aimed the spear there, guessing that his panic would send him into the nearest gap. She impaled him against the rock. He screamed and gnashed his teeth. The other dassies fled with shrieks, but Namo barely heard them. She was too terrified of being bitten. The dassie flopped wildly, snapping its sharp tusks. She didn't dare let it go. With her free hand, she felt around for a stone and smashed him on the head. She struck him repeatedly until he stopped moving. Namo sat down and burst into tears. I don't like hunting, she sobbed. You did very well, said Mother. I didn't. It was even worse than dropping a rock on a guinea fowl. But you did it, and it was your very first try. True, Namo admitted. She wiped her eyes and looked at the dead animal. Its body was sleekly fat. Its meat would make a welcome change for mice and termites. Namo willed the trembling in her hands to go away. She got the panga and expertly prepared the carcass. Soon she had it roasting over the fire. It was heavier than 2 guinea fowl. She could smoke cure most of it for later and still have a banquet tonight. Her salt was finished, but she had made a substitute some time ago. Mutsangitsa plants were common on the island. They were bushy herbs with purple daisy-like flowers, growing as high as her knee. Namo had soaked and then burned them. She mixed the ashes with water. She poked holes in the calabash and patted it with dry grass to make a sieve, because unfiltered Mutsangitsa ashes were slightly poisonous. The juice that dripped through was collected in a pot and boiled until only a white residue was left. The residue didn't taste as good as salt, but it was better than nothing, and the same residue could be used to tenderize tough leaves or meat. Namo felt elated as she feasted on roasted dassie. She sang, I had mambas for breakfast to put me in a bad mood. Now I am ready for anything. Run, dassies, hide in your holes. I crunch up bones like a mother hyena and hit flies on the wings with my spear. She would make more weapons. She would make spears, throwing sticks, a bow and arrow, and a sling. She would be chief of the island. My island, Namo thought happily as she licked the grease from her fingers. And, she thought later as she snuggled up to the grass-stuffed grain sack, I've solved the mystery of Ruppy's tail. A caracal is exactly the kind of creature that would try to catch a skinny baboon. Chapter 27. Sorry, Booba, I didn't mean to stop petting. Here we go. He's still sitting right in front of me, just cuddled up and enjoying his pets. Chapter 27. As the dry season progressed, the grass shriveled and many trees lost their leaves. The lake, which was receding gradually anyhow, experienced another sudden drop. Now there was dry land all the way to the little island, except for the final deep channel. Namo worried that something might be tempted to invade from the larger island. Her bathing pool dried up. Collecting water was hazardous again, and she had to wash hurriedly, with one eye watching for the crocodile. She couldn't make soap with ashes and fat as Aunt Chippo had done in the village. Every morsel of fat went down her throat, but she made a reasonable substitute from the boiled roots of the Ruretzo plant. The vines grew everywhere, and their green and silver-white leaves contrasting attractively with rose-pink flowers. The leaves were edible too, but they left a slimy feel in Namo's mouth. She didn't eat them unless she was starving. It's so hot, Namo sighed, brushing away mapane flies as he worked on the boat. I wish I could sit at the bottom of a nice cool lake like you, she told Crocodile Guts. You'd have to be dead to do it, Crocodile Guts reminded her. He was puffing out a pipe made from a long-stemmed calabash with a clay tobacco bowl inserted into the round bulb of the plant. It was so much like grandmother's pipe, Namo suddenly felt her throat constrict. How do you keep a fire lit in the water? She asked to keep the lonely sickness away. Anything's possible in the country of the Njuzu, the boatman said enigmatically. Don't you get homesick? Hi, buddy. Aw, I love you too, boo-boo. Aw, sweet boy. He just looked at me and was like, Mama. So cute. Don't you get homesick? I won't be here forever, little disaster. What do you mean? You know the custom. My brothers have already divided up my things. If Anna was still alive, one of them would have to been forced to marry her. I'd like to have seen that argument. Crocodile Guts laughed so hard he almost fell off his stool. Namo nodded. She remembered the boatman's wife screaming insults at her husband. She was a good person, just a little noisy, Crocodile Guts said. Everyone was annoyed when they found the boat missing by the way. How do you know all this? Asked Namo. The Njuzu told me. Of course, thought Namo. Snakes went everywhere. He saw them rustling through the leaves, watching the affairs of the village from their dark lairs. Anyhow, my family's going to have the coming home ceremony at the end of the dry season. They sent all the invitations. And then, said Namo, and then I go home. But what about me? You'll be on your way by then. What if I'm not? Namo wailed. You can't leave me. You'll have to work faster, little disaster. You haven't been paying attention. The Njuzu can give you plenty of advice, but you have to pay attention. Crocodile Guts knocks the ashes out of his pipe and packs it again with tobacco. An Njuzu girl picks up a live coal from her cook fire and carries it to him in her delicate hands. The underwater scene rippled and vanished. Namo was alone next to the mukwa log. She hurled the scraping stone as hard as she could against the rock. How can he go off and leave me? Selfish man. He's living like a king at the bottom of a lake. Oh. You done with your pets, boo-boo? Now that I'm sufficiently covered in cat hair? Good boy. Good boy. Good boy. Now that I'm sufficiently covered in cat hair, and I chose today of all days to wear black clothing, I think he's done for now. I think he's just gonna sit and hang out. You're welcome to stay, buddy. You don't have to leave. You don't have to leave unless you want to. He's like, I want to stay, but I also want to go. I want to stay, but I want to go. Stay if you want to, boo-boo. I'm not gonna push you away. You know this. Sweet boy. You like the abominable snowman now, for real. It's a good thing I have a lint roller on the what? Rolling off all this hair. There we go. She hurled the scraping stone as hard as she could against the rock. How can he go off and leave me? Selfish man. He's living like a king at the bottom of a lake. He doesn't care what happens to me. All he has to do is let his pipe go out and one of those creepy snake girls light it again. The image of the Medusa lifting a coal came to her mind. What a strange thing to do. What was it about that coal? Normal saw it glowing in her mind as she gazed at the mukwa log. Of course! Why was she spending so much time chipping away at the wretched boat when she could burn a hole into it? You're right. I haven't been paying attention, she apologized to Crocodile Guts. I'm so sorry I lost my temper. I'm an ungrateful child and I'm lucky you speak to me at all. I don't really think you're creepy, Van Medusa, she added. You just take a little getting used to. That afternoon, Nama sacrificed her best calabash to the water spirits. She had decorated it with black and red designs from crushed berries. She filled it with lucky beans to make up for lack of proper beads, and hurled it far into the lake. She poured marula juice into the water for Crocodile Guts because she didn't have any beer. In spite of her new weapons, Nama's food supply grew smaller as the dry season struck with full force. Plants she could count on earlier were ravaged by baboons. Her traps were destroyed by jackals, honey badgers, and the caracal. She was certain of its identity now. Not only had she heard it meowing in the dark, but she also saw it make an absolutely stunning leap early one morning. It spotted a dassy on the cliff. With breathtaking accuracy, it sprung straight into the air twice the height of a person, and plucked the hapless creature off its perch. Buddy, really? You're so gross! Little asshole, he just let one rip and then walked away. He left the room. It's so gross. Oh, it stinks. Oh, that little butthead. Oh, I love that baby, but he's gonna get it later. I'm gonna fart right on him when he sleeps. Watch. Oh, that stinks. He just straight up ripped ass and left. King, are you okay? Oh man. Oh, I'm so glad I had my candle lit, because my god, that would just be terrible. Oh, little asshole. Oh. Ugh. Let's see. Not only had she heard it meowing in the dark, but she also saw it make an absolutely stunning leap one early morning. It had spotted a dassy on the cliff. With breathtaking accuracy, it sprang straight into the air, twice the height of a person, and plucked the hapless creature off its perch. After that, Nama reinforced the thorn bush barrier around her trees and added a coat of birdlime to the bark. She still managed to bring down the occasional hare or dassy, but she had to spend a long time hunting them. It took time away from her work on the boat. It was taking shape more rapidly now that she used burning coals to hollow it out. One day, as Nama watched the baboon troop pass beneath her platform, she realized that they had many more sources of food than she. She had only explored a fraction of the island. Surrounded by an ever vigilant crowd of baboons, she could hardly be safer finding new hunting grounds. Nama climbed down the ladder, hooked it out of harm's way, and greeted by one or two outraged "ooh, ah, ooh, ooh," trailed after the creatures. At first the animals moved rapidly. They obviously had a goal in mind. She kept her distance. After a while the baboons fanned out and began digging earnestly in the soil. They hauled up thick, juicy grass roots, knocked them against their arms to dislodge dirt, and proceeded to feed. The babies clustered around to snatch unguarded morsels. Namo dug too, using a sharpened stick. She stored the roots on the carrying basket. The animals turned over logs, ripped off bark, and plunged their paws down into holes. They sometimes withdrew them hurriedly, picked over cassia trees for pods. Namo copied everything, with the exception of sticking her hand in holes. She wasn't that desperate yet. The baboon devoured beetles, grubs, maggots, grasshoppers, mice, and even scorpions. Namo shuddered when they nipped off the stinger. One of them uncovered a snake and set the whole troop into a screaming panic. Namo went up the nearest tree, scratching herself badly. "Stupid animals," she muttered, climbing down. "Still." Still, it was pleasant foraging with company. The baboons appeared to accept her presence. They allowed her to sit almost within arm's reach. She collected grasshoppers and grubs, cassia pods, the black fruit of the buffalo thorn, donkey berries, and sow thistle leaves. In the heat of the day, the troop rested in the shade of the Musasa Grove. The remains of a stream meandered through the rocks, and here and there were small pools of water at which the baboons and Namo could refresh themselves. "This was an excellent idea," Namo told Mother. "I have enough food for several days, so I can stay by the boat for a while. The work is going quickly now that I'm using hot coals." All at once she felt a tickling sensation on her back. She had tied rabbit skins around her hips to save the precious cloth for her eventual arrival in Zimbabwe. So everything from her waist up was bare. Namo felt horribly vulnerable. Something was itching its way across her skin. Namo didn't scream. She didn't jump. Months in the wild had taught her the wisdom of sitting perfectly still until she found out what was happening. None of the animals were reacting, so the danger had to be small. "It's probably a scorpion," she thought bitterly. "The baboons are probably envious of my good luck." Flicker, flicker. She felt a pinch, the scrape of a tiny nail. Very slowly she turned her head. Her heart was pounding. It was Tag. He looked up briefly and went back to his examination of her skin. He was grooming her. Nama's emotions underwent a rapid change. She was relieved, of course, then pleased that the tiny creature had trusted her. And then she began to shiver. From some unknown depth, sobs rolled out of her. Tag jumped back, his mouth open in alarm. Namo wept until she thought she was wrung dry. All those nights she laid on the platform hugging the green bag came back to her. What she wanted, what she desperately needed, was touch. Now she understood the hours the baboons spent combing one another's fur. Now she knew why they wore such blissful expressions and why Rumpy would put up with any mistreatment in order to lure someone into grooming his hide. Donkey Berry and the other animals seemed to recognize her agony. They didn't move nearer, but they didn't flee. They watched her nervously. Tag was clinging to his mother's stomach. This wasn't the reaction he expected to get for being friendly. "I'm sorry, Tag," Namo said, hugging herself tightly. "I like you. I really do." She made lip-smacking noises, aware how ridiculous it must appear. Just like fat cheeks, she thought. Well, it didn't matter. No one was going to laugh at her. He's at his scratch board. That's what Boo Boo is. He's at his scratching board. He loves that damn thing. I have to replace it soon, but he's been scratching at it. He lays on it like it's a bed. He's a weird cat. He has a bed. I made him a bed. He's a weird cat. After a while, Tag untangled himself and began to wrestle a wrestling game with another baby. Troop went back to dozing. Namo felt weak with emotion. It's probably my period coming. I seemed to cry more easily then, she thought. In the afternoon, she harvested wild cotton plants to use in her pads. It made sense to work on the boat, but Tag's offer of friendship had made a deep impression on Namo. He was really like a naughty little boy. Perhaps Aunt Shuvai's baby was toddling by now, getting into mischief, making Masvito laugh. Nama didn't need to forage for a few days, but she found herself following the troop anyhow next morning. At midday she rested with them, tensely waiting to see if the baby would approach her again. He did. He picked up through the rabbit skins, explored Nama's back, and then scrambled onto her head. She held herself tightly to keep from screaming. Tag found her head enormously entertaining. Her fur wasn't at all like anything he was used to. He pulled and prodded, chuckling to himself. Then he bounced off and scampered over to Donkeyberry, who was watching the scene anxiously. See, I didn't once try to eat him, she said Namo. She felt her head ruefully. Tag was anything but gentle. She grunted softly, the way baboons did when they wanted to be friendly. Donkeyberry yawned. Namo had learned this meant that the old creature wasn't easy. I don't blame you, Namo told her. I can imagine Masvito's reaction if Aunt Shuvai's baby tried to pull out your hair. Every day the troop traveled farther. Namo discovered hills and valleys she never knew existed. She passed an enormous fallen log that swarmed with bees, but she didn't dare try to get the honey. Only men did that, and sometimes they got more than they bargained for. She found a shallow pool filled with water lilies. The bowls would make an acceptable food when other things ran out. She found a chocolate berry tree, loaded with juicy black fruit. The taste was pleasant enough, but the smell was disgusting. Masvito often said chocolate berries reminded her of bedbugs. Namo knew it was foolish to ignore any source of food, though, so she held her nose and ate. The baboons, she discovered, were not above eating baby birds and mice. Fat Cheeks even killed a hare and snarled at anyone who tried to get a share. She wondered if he had been one of the culprits who had destroyed her trap. One afternoon, the troop didn't return to the sleeping cliff at all. Noma realized with horror that they intended to spend the night in the trees. It was too late for her to return alone. She climbed the tree with the rest and sat there miserably all night, with her legs aching and her body chilled. She jumped the very time she heard a noise. In the morning, she returned to her platform alone and spent the day in bed with her arms around the brave Sakri. You really have to stop following the baboons around and work on the boat, said Mother, as Namo buried her nose into the comforting bag. I know, Snowball sighed. It's so nice to have company. They're animals. You belong with people. I know. You don't have much time, little disaster, said Crocodile Guts. When the rain starts, you're going to have elephant-sized waves on that lake. Namo covered her head with the dress cloth. You can't play Let's Pretend now. This isn't the deserted village. Namo saw Crocodile Guts packing a string bag. He put in a pipe, fishing lines, and a reed flute she remembered him playing as he waited for fish to blunder into his net. The Injusa girls rose to the surface of the water and looked expectantly to the east, from where storm clouds would come. Chapter 28. Namo grudgingly went back to work on the boat. Now and then she doused the clothes and carved away the blackened bits with Uncle Kufa's knife. Bigotry was beginning to look like a real boat, or at least like a log with a very large hole in it. Namo labored for several days, but one morning the loneliness sickness struck her with such force her spirit felt like it was being circled by hyenas. It wouldn't hurt to gather supplies, she explained to Mother, to keep from being scolded. She armed herself with a banga and spear, and set off after the troops. This time they went up a hill near another end of the island. This territory was new, and Namo realized she would have to stay with the baboons because she wasn't sure of the way back. The animals located a rich stand of wild grapes in a dell part way up the hill. They fell on them ravenously. They didn't seem at ease, though, and she wondered why they had left such a good supply of food untouched before. Fat Cheeks and the other large males kept looking around. Rumpy dropped his fruit whenever anyone made a sudden movement. Namo found their nervousness contagious. During the noontime rest, everyone sat much closer than usual. Tag tried to pull off the bag Namo wore around her neck, and she had to push him away. He hurled himself to the ground. Eek, 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 he scolded, thrashing around in the dirt. He looked just like a toddler having a temper tantrum. Namo refused to look at him, and after a moment, Tag scuttled off to play with someone else. Hi, Claria. Hello. How are you doing today, friend? I hope you are doing well. I hope you also enjoyed this story. It's getting good, I hope you're having a lovely day, friend. I hope you're having a lovely, lovely day. I feel like I'm a little quiet. Hold on. I might be a little quiet today. I feel quiet today. Today feels like a quiet day for me. Let's see. Rumpy went from female to female, trying to get himself groomed. He smacked his hooves seductively, but it did him no good. One and all, the females turned their backs. Some days are like that, remarked Namo. She immediately regretted speaking out loud. Rumpy noticed her and halted in his tracks. He was trying to put a thought together in his mind, and she had an awful suspicion what it was. This strange animal has been following us for days. Tag likes it. Tag grooms it, so it must be available to groom someone else. Oh no, cried Namo as the scruffy baboon shuffled towards her, smacking his lips. She turned her back. Rumpy trotted in front of her again. Oh, he coaxed. No, shouted Namo. The other baboons flinched, but Rumpy wasn't discouraged. Everyone shouted at him. He was used to it. Go away, Namo yelled. Rumpy fluffed out his fur. I'm a male, and it's the duty of all females to obey me, he seemed to say. Namo jumped up and grabbed a rock. The baboon instantly understood. Ooh, ah, oh, he barked angrily. Fat Cheeks, who was lounging nearby, rose to his feet and roared out the counter threat. I'm the chief here. No one else is allowed to push people around. Suddenly, all the baboons were aroused. Their nervousness flared into rage. The males screamed at one another, tore up branches and slapping the ground. The females gathered up their shrieking young. The whole dell erupted with wild cries. Namo realized she was in danger. She dashed farther up the hill to put distance between her and the excited animals. Soon she couldn't see them, although she could hear their cries. I'll stay away until they stop fighting, she decided. Their shouts were already dying down, but she didn't go back yet. She climbed higher. She had spotted an unusual tree at the top of the hill. It had hand-shaped leaves and purple berries like the one found on bramble vines. All around, the rocks were stained with purple splashes. The birds clearly fed on the tree, but that didn't mean the fruit was safe. Birds sometimes ate things that poison people. On the other hand, most of the things they ate were perfectly good. Namo cautiously tasted a berry. It was delicious. She stored some in her carrying basket. She would try the new fruit on Rumpy before she ate any more. If he got a bellyache, it was no great loss. She explored farther and found more of the unusual trees. All around was the silent forest, and she heard no birds. Rivet monkeys slipped through the branches like shadows, sliding amongst the leaves. It was strange that they didn't make any noise. At the very top of the hill, Namo found a crack in the rock. She followed it around the corner to where it widened to reveal a cave. Sand, which seemed too cool for the hot afternoon, surrounded its entrance. She dug her toes into it. The mouth of the cave wasn't large. She knelt down to get a better look. And in the shadows where the sand disappeared into darkness, she saw a heap of skulls. They were little skulls belonging to monkeys. They stared out with empty eyes, and all around the ground was littered with tiny bones. No wonder the monkeys were silent. This was the lair of the carousel. Namo hurried down the hill and sat as close to Donkey Berry as the old creature permitted. She was relieved when the baboons made a long trek back to the sleeping cliffs, rather than spend the night in the trees. They seemed as anxious to get away from the cave as she was. Rumpy pounced on the new fruit. He relished every berry and showed no ill effects, but Namo was frightened to go back up the hill by herself. Nor did the baboons return to gather more grapes. One visit was enough for their nerves. They soon learned to tear Namo's traps apart. First one, then another discovered the great secret, until she couldn't get to the snares fast enough to salvage any food. The baboons learned about the bird lime too, and she found now were a few forlorn feathers. Her garden, never healthy, turned its yellow into the heat. She was used to eating the pumpkin leaves, when every one of the new vegetables was devoured by beetles. Here and there she managed to salvage a tomato, a handful of okra, a stunted yam. It wasn't enough. She made a bow and arrows, but hardly ever hit her targets. She spent hours lurking by the dassy dens only to have them scale an almost vertical rock to escape. The dassies knew she was their enemy. They evaporated almost before she could see them. As the food supplies disappeared, Namo felt a strange nervousness descend on the island. The baboons muttered more at night. The antelope were more wary, the birds readier to take flight. Nothing, she had to admit, had gone right since the day she looked into that bone-filled cave. More distressing, Rumpy had decided she was another member of the troop, a less important member. He began to play the kick someone off a rock game with her. He stared at her aggressively, slapping the ground and swaggering over where his fur puffed out. Namo hurriedly moved away. With great satisfaction, Rumpy sat down in the place she had vacated. This was the first time he'd been able to bully anyone. He loved it. He followed her around, demanding that she share her food. She retreated to the platform to eat, as he sat below, watching intently. I have to do to spirit you, she yelled at him. I have to chase you with the panga. But actually, she was afraid. Rumpy might be a miserable specimen compared to the other males, but he was still a large animal with lethal-looking fangs. She didn't know how far she could push him. Namo foraged by herself these days. She scurried back to her tree before the troop returned. Rumpy made her too nervous to enjoy sitting with the baboons anymore. Hunting for food took almost most of her time now. She peeled the roots of wild geraniums and baked them in the hot coals. They were so tough, it was like gnawing on a tree. She cooked their bitter leaves as a vegetable. She boiled cassia pods to make a thin, unsatisfying soup and roasted spongy, tasteless water lily bulbs. All of this filled her stomach, but it wasn't nourishing. Namo began to get dizzy when she stood up. She had to rest frequently on her foraging expeditions, and she realized that she was slowly starving. The sky remained a hot, dry blue with not a single cloud in it. Namo sat by the mukwa log, too dispirited to work. It was hollowed out well enough, but the exterior still looked like a lumpy tree. Crocodile Guts' boat had been shaped to move smoothly in the water. The sides were braced to keep from warping. Altogether, his craft was a work of great skill, and Namo despaired of equaling it. She couldn't even roll the log over, much less drag it to the water, which receded farther from the work site every day. Besides, she was bone-tired. The smoke from the fire she used to make coals made her head swim. She rested her cheek on the log and closed her eyes out of sheer exhaustion. Gradually, she became aware that things were awfully quiet. Not even the go-away birds called in the heat. The air was breathless and still. The forest had that eerie quality she had noticed near the Carousel cave. Namo sat up quickly in spite of her fatigue. For 2 nights, the baboons had chosen to nest in another part of the island. She listened for the distant shouts. There was nothing. Namo picked up the panga. I'll get some water quickly and go back to the platform, she thought. Watching the harsh shadow under the trees, she edged towards the lake. If anything, the bright light stabbing through the leaves made things more confusing. She stopped several times when she couldn't immediately identify something. She knelt by the reeds and cautiously filled her calabash. On a rock set back from the water was a large shape. The rock was flat, almost like a platform, and was overhung by a large fig with roots snaking down on either side. Her heart thudded heavily. Namo shielded her eyes. The shape began to look familiar. It was a kudu. The kudu didn't lie so quietly on its side unless it was dead. She could tell it was a male by the huge spiraling horns. Its reddish-brown back, marked by pale stripes, lay toward her, and one of the large cup-like ears was silhouetted against the pale trunk of the fig. Namo clapped loudly. The kudu didn't move. If it was alive, it would have sprung to its feet. It might have starved or died of old age, or it might have eaten something poisonous. One thing was clear. It wouldn't stay on that rock long if the jackals and vultures discovered it. Namo carefully made her way to the animal, looking around for possible rivals. She saw a trickle of blood glistening on the stone. It was still damp. She halted. This antelope has just died. and not from starvation. Nama raised herself on a tiptoe, craning her neck to see what was on the other side of the rock. Whatever had slain the Kadu was invisible, but it, or they, since it must have been jackals, had to be nearby. No predators would abandon such a rich feast. Nama lifted the banga and reached forward. The thought of all that meat made her reckless. She could snatch a morsel away from the jackals. They were probably sleeping off their first meal nearby. She could see that the intestines and forelegs had been devoured. The hind legs were untouched. The neck of the antelope was scored with teeth marks. It had been strangled. Jackals didn't do that. They weren't strong enough. They disemboweled their prey, devouring it while it was still alive. Strangling was a technique used by Carcels, but no Carcel could have brought down such a large animal. A Kadu stood taller than Nama and weighed 10 times as much. Only a lion or a leopard could have done it. Nama was positive her island contained no lions. The roars were too obvious. They only left leopards. A leopard, she thought. How could I have overlooked it? But she knew. When she had discovered the Carcel's footprints, she had seized on that to explain Rumpy's injury. She had assumed that it lived in the cave on the other end of the island. But what would an obviously starving baboon troop avoid a hill covered with wild grapes? Not because of a creature smaller than themselves. How could I have been so stupid? Nama's spirit threatened to abandon her. She felt like an antelope caught circled by hyenas. Sometimes an animal simply gave up and let itself be devoured. I am Nama Jongwe, a woman, not a little girl, she told herself. My totem is the lion. Lions are stronger than leopards. It wasn't much consolation, but it was enough to keep her spirit from entirely fleeing her. Keep thinking, she ordered her body. Leopards carried their prey into trees, but the Kadu was too large to fit. The big cat had eaten as much as it could and managed and was withdrawn to rest. It wouldn't go far. For the moment, though, it was sated and perhaps even asleep. Nama had gone beyond terror to a state that was almost a dream. She couldn't possibly run fast enough. She had a hope of fighting off a leopard with a child's training spear. There was nothing she could do to protect herself, and so she did the only sensible thing and began to cut off a big, meaty hind leg from the Kadu. It was too heavy for her to lift. She dragged it back to her tree and set about butchering it. She cut off long, thin strips of meat and laid them on her smoking platform. Methodically, still in a dream, Nama built up a fire beneath. The trick was to bathe the meat in smoke without actually roasting it. Smoking preserved the meat far longer than cooking did. She roasted some of the Kadu, though, for immediate use. The rich food filled her with elation, but she was too shaken by the presence of the leopard to make up a victory poem. In the late afternoon, shouts in the forest told Nama that the baboon troop was on his way to the cliff. Smoke curing the meat would take at least 2 days, and she didn't dare leave it exposed. Hi, Dean. Good morning. You too? Are you also trying to get your morning pets? Are you trying to get your morning pets, pretty girl? Yes, that's the wall. You're gonna do a full body stretch? Yeah. I'm gonna have scratch marks on my wall by the end of it. I swear. Ma'am. In the late afternoon, shouts in the forest told Nama that the baboon troop was on its way back to the cliff. Smoke curing the meat would take at least 2 days, and she didn't dare leave it exposed. She would have to do the operation in stages. She hauled the meat into the trees and laid it out. The wind was so hot and dry, it would hasten the process of curing it on its own. The baboons drifted past below and sniffed as closely as they dared to the fire. Rumpy bared his fangs at the smoking platform, then looked up at Nama, who was watching from her shelter. She had the unpleasant suspicion that he knew exactly where the meat had gone. Sorry, I needed a little bit of tea. Chapter 29. Once upon a time, a farmer lived in the middle of a forest full of baboons, began Nama. It was late at night. Her nerves wouldn't let her sleep, so she decided to tell Mother a story. Nama hugged a grass-filled grain bag, and she had Mother's jar nestled next to her face. She knew the leopard wouldn't be a problem until she finished eating the Kadu, but he's still out there. The farmer could never relax, she went on. Day after day, the baboons looked hungrily at his mealies, but every time they tried to get to them, the farmer would pelt them with rocks from his sling. Finally, the chief baboon said, "My brothers, we're never going to get those mealies. The man is much too watchful. He can make mistakes, though. He never guards the goat pen because he doesn't know that we can eat meat." "Hoo, hoo," cried the other animals. "Let's go raid the goat pen." They killed the goat and roasted its meat. "Do you know what would be really funny?" suggested the chief baboon. "Let's sew our droppings into the skin and prop it up outside the farmer's hut." "Oh, wow, what a great idea," cried the other animals. They filled the skin with baboon droppings, sewed it up, and propped it up against the farmer's door. Then they hid in the bushes to watch. Soon the farmer came out. "Good morning, my fine nanny goat. What are you doing out of your pen?" The goat didn't answer. "Well, don't just stand there blocking the door. Get out of the way," said the farmer. But the goat didn't answer. The man shouted at the animal, and then, when it still didn't answer, he lost his temper and kicked it. "My, we!" The stitches flew apart. The goat's skin exploded and sent baboon droppings all over the hut. The farmer was furious. "Wow, wow," cried the baboons, falling over themselves with laughter. "I'll get them back for that," the man said as he swept and washed out his hut. He dug a deep pit in front of his garden and covered it with branches. Then he lay down the trail to the forest and pretended to be dead. The baboons discovered him. They pushed and prodded him. He didn't move. They sang, "The farmer is dead. What had killed him? He died of grief for his goat. With what can we repay him? We'll have to bury him," said the chief baboon. So they carried the farmer into the forest and dug a grave. It was hard work, and soon the animals got bored. "Who cares if the hyenas scatter his bones?" said the chief baboon, wiping his face. "The good thing is he's no longer around to throw rocks at us. Let's go raid the mealies." The baboons left the farmer and hurried back down the trail. They raced to the garden, fell into the pit, and were all killed. The farmer lived happily ever after and never had to worry about his plants again. Mama hugged the green bag and listened to the sounds of the night. She could hear the usual mutter of the baboons. They couldn't be too worried, or they wouldn't talk. "It's going to be more difficult to finish that boat now," Mother said. "I shouldn't have put it off," moaned Namu. "There's always something dangerous in the forest. You just have to be more careful." "I can't work with that creature around." "You don't have a choice," Mother pointed out. "The waves are as big as elephants during the raining season," said Crocodile Guts from his soft bed in Juzu's village. Namu got up and sat on the edge of her platform. She watched the starlit cliff with its murmuring baboons until dawn. As she had hoped, the meat dried steadily during the night. It hadn't spoiled. As soon as the baboons were gone, Namu built up the curing fire. Clouds of smoke billowed up through the gaps in the platform, adding flavor as well as preserving the meat. Now and then she turned the strips to expose both sides. "I can't possibly work on a boat until this is finished," she explained to Mama. Then, to keep from feeling guilty, Namu devised a method to protect her stores. She took 2 of the now useless fish traps, plugged the small ends, and hung them by long ropes on the highest branch of the lucky bean trees. The branch extended out over the grasslands. She could pull the fish trap. I think my cats are making a mess. Hold on. I gotta go check that out. I think they dropped something too. Holy crap. Hey, what are you doing? Beans, bad girl. Yep, I was right. Beans. Beans ended up going somewhere she shouldn't have. She knocked some stuff over. Thankfully nothing broken, but that was scary. Speaking of scary, what the hell is going on outside? Something's happening outside. I also live near both a fire department and a precinct, so it's not surprising whenever you hear something pass by my window. They're not that far off. They're like within the mile. Alright, let's continue back to where I was. Madam, jumping on places you shouldn't have? Bad girl. was I? Okay, here we go. Namo devised a method to protect her stores. She took 2 of the now useless fish traps, plugged the small ends, and hung them by long ropes from the highest branch of the lucky bean trees. The branch extended out over the grasslands. She could pull the fish traps back by means of a string. I can store the meat inside the birds can't reach it and the baboons can't jump that high. To be on the safe side, Namo built a low fire on the ground below. If Rumpy tried anything, he was going to get a hot foot. In the middle of the day, Namo made a quick trip for water. The stream was dry now, and she had to depend on the lake. She put the bonga into a sling with the calabashes and kept her spear handy. She half intended to raid the canoe carcass again, but when she got to the shore, the antelope was gone. All of it. Got some sirens. I know! Something must be going on. Didn't do it, I swear. I kid. Oh. I'm kidding. I didn't do anything. She hasn't. Yes. The leopard must have dragged it into a tree, she thought. The rock looked perfectly clean, though, without a trace of blood. Or perhaps there was blood. Namo was too unnerved to check closely. In the afternoon, she packed the fish traps with dried meat and suspended them from an overhanging branch. Well satisfied, she went to the stream to gather a few blackjack leaves for relish. The stream was dry, but the cool dampness still clung to the soil. Ooh! The sound brought her instantly alert. The baboons were back early, and they had come almost silently. Suddenly, they were all around her in a milling crowd. It wasn't the chaotic, screeching mob she was used to. The animals slipped through the grassland like the vervet monkeys, near the leopard cave. Even Tag was impressed with the seriousness of it. He rode on Donkeyberry's back without a single murmur. Namo shivered. The males were unusually irritable. They snapped at one another and threatened the females. Now that the troop was close to the sleeping cliff, the animals spurred out and applied themselves to digging in the soil. That in and of itself was unusual. At the end of the day, the baboons preferred social activities. Grooming, entertaining infants, lounging in friendly groups. They were clearly ravenous. Something had kept them from feeding. Rumpy sniffed around the smoke platform, barking as his claws singed his nose. He spotted Namo and trotted up, fur bristling, to demand a meager bunch of blackjack leaves. "Go away!" shouted Namo. Rumpy slapped the ground. She snatched up a stone and hurled it accurately at his head. Rumpy danced back and forth with fury. He didn't cower as he usually did when she hit him. She suddenly realized he was dangerous. She grabbed a spear, which was lying against the thorn barrier, and quickly unhooked the ladder. As it flopped down, she thrust the spear at the angry creature to drive him away. Rumpy sprang forward instead. He sent Namo crashing to the ground as he rushed to grab the ladder. His foot smashed her face into the dirt. By the time she recovered, he was already on the platform, raging through her possessions. His big teeth crunched into calabashes to get the food inside, but what he really wanted, and could obviously smell, was the meat. He hopped from branch to branch. He caved in the delicate, smaller platforms. He found the fish traps hanging from the rope, but he couldn't reach them. The branch was too slender, and he didn't have the sense to pull them in with the string. Rumpy bounced up and down in the tree in a perfect fit of rage. Meanwhile, Nabo had grabbed a burning branch from the fire. She was terrified, but her survival depended on protecting her stores. She swung up the ladder and shoved the flames into Rumpy's face. He flinched back. She clambered around him, trying to drag him out of the tree. Rumpy was beginning to lose nerve. Namo approached him like a small and utterly reckless honey badger. She screamed insults. She cursed his ancestors. She felt like she wouldn't mind sinking her teeth into his throat. "Wah!" shouted Rumpy. He dodged past her, his twisted foot stumbling against Mother's jar, and he fell with a shriek over the edge of the platform. Mother's jar rolled after him before Namo could reach it. It smashed open, and the picture caught in the afternoon breeze from the lake, and fluttered off and landed in the cook fire. Nama almost fell out of the tree in her haste. She ignored the fallen animal as she raced for the picture. The same puff of wind that had blown it away stirred the coals in the fire. They flared up briefly, caught the paper, and burned it to ashes before Nama could even get close. She knocked the coals aside with her bare hands, ignoring the searing pain in her fingers, but it was already too late. The picture blew away like the ashes that had been beaten into the mortar so long ago in the village, the day that Tete died. Ambia, they whispered. Sister Chippo, Masvita, beloved Namo, please do not be frightened. I must go now. I know you will follow when you can. The ashes floated off in the wind, carrying the message. Chapter 30. Namo laid on the platform. The ruins of her belongings laid around her. She didn't bother to check them. The sun passed over the trees once or perhaps twice since she had crawled to her present bed. She had drunk water. Rumpy hadn't been interested in those calabashes. She had eaten nothing. What was the point? She didn't even put her arms around the grain bag. She couldn't bring herself to touch it. Below, the baboons ransacked the smoking platform. Normal turned on her side and watched a line of ants move up a tree. Perhaps they had found their way to the kudu meat. What difference did it make? When she stirred enough to climb onto a branch to relieve herself, she saw that Rumpy no longer laid on the ground, so he must have survived. More time passed. It was dark, then light again. She saw fat cheeks of Tag drape over his shoulder and Donkeyberry searching the remains of the calabashes on the ground. Rumpy appeared. His limp was far worse. He moaned to himself as he struggled along, and the other baboons seized the opportunity to bully him. The water ran out. Nama's tongue stuck to the roof of her mouth. Her body smelled strange. Not dirty exactly, but old, like a musty cave where animals had laired for a long time. Her head ached. It doesn't take long to die of thirst, she thought dully. She didn't think she had the strength to climb down the ladder. Darkness came, and with it a cooling breeze. The sun in the leaves was like water rushing across the sky. The moon was growing again, and smoky light spilled through the gaps in the tree's canopy. I'm on my way, little disaster, said Crocodile Guts. He had a string bag hefted over his shoulder. My relatives have brewed beer, and my oldest son has bought a goat to sacrifice at the coming home ceremony. It'll be good to see them again. Namo didn't answer. I suppose Anna will be there. I hope she's forgiven me for dying first. Crocodile Guts scratched his hair thoughtfully. I would have liked a sacrificial bull, but times have been hard recently. My sons have promised me a bull as soon as they can afford it. I'll probably have to remind them. Nama watched him stride along the bottom of the lake as easily as a man on a forest trail. Just before he moved out of sight, the boatman turned and called. The Njuzu might be lonely for a while. Don't be surprised if they pay you a visit. And then he was gone. First mother, now Crocodile Guts had deserted me, thought Namo. She watched the cool moonlight slide along the platform. The baboons stirred on their rocky perches. An eagle owl called as it floated along the upper airs. Shh! Something was moving in the grass below. Ooh. It came a sigh. Namo tried to ignore it. So what if something wanted to kill her? She wanted to die. The sounds went on. Shh. Of course she wanted to die on her own terms. Not some horrible beasts. Excuse me. Her plan was to stay on the platform until her spirit was driven away by thirst. She had seen people die of cholera. Eventually, they fell into a fevered sleep that deepened until they simply let go. There were worse ways. Nama put her eye to a gap in the platform. 2 Njuzu girls were weaving around the thorn barrier, looking for a way up. They lengthened their supple bodies until they were thin enough to slither between the thorns. Nama felt a chill pass over her. She was too dehydrated to break out in a sweat. Up they came until they reached the first foothold Nama had carved into a tree trunk before she had made the ladder. Now, the Injusa did a very strange thing. Instead of sliding around it, which they could easily have done, they searched until they found a fragment of wood, the mattering part of the storage platforms Rumpy had smashed. One of the snakes carried the wood to the hole in her fangs, and the other butted it into place for her head. In a moment, the rift was healed. They went on to the next hole, and then the next until the trunk was smooth again. Then they came to the ring of birdline. Nama had put it there to discourage the carousel. He watched to see how the Injusa would handle the problem. They slithered down the tree and gathered up dry grass. Back and forth they went, gluing grass to the birdline until it was covered up. When they were finished, they glided over as smoothly as if they were rustling across a rock. Nama had to admire the cleverness, but she realized that she was about to have Injusu in her bed. She wanted to die, but she did not want snakes crawling all over her first. She crept to the other end of the platform, her body trembling with effort. Injusu coiled over the edge with their eyes glittering in the moonlight. One of them found the calabash Nana was certain was empty and dived her head inside. Water droplets twinkled as she rose again. Her mouth burned with water. "No!" cried Namo, clinging to the trunk. "Go away!" One snake twined around the girl's body. It came up by her face. She lightly caught Namo's lower lip with her fangs and pulled the girl's mouth open with surprising strength. "Ah!" Namo gasped. The other girl bent over her mouth and poured the shining water inside. It was cold, so cold. It sank into her body like a frog diving into a lake. At once the Injusu shook themselves loose, rippled over the rim of the platform, and disappeared. Nama was shocked to the very depths of her being. She clung to the tree, shivering violently. She had swallowed something offered by the Injusu. Did that mean she was condemned to live with them forever? Or did the rule only apply to food? One thing was certain. Her determination to die had completely vanished. Now she passionately wanted to live. She only hoped it wasn't too late to try. Nama's first chore, as soon as the darkness lifted, was to get water. She was badly dehydrated. Her skin was loose and her ears buzzed, but she was filled with a kind of strength that had been missing the day before. She dipped the calabash, the one the Injusa had used, into the lake and drank repeatedly. She laid under a tree and let the water take effect. After a while, she returned to the lucky beans and ate some of the dried meat. The whole day was spent drinking water and eating. She noticed that the tree trunk was still scarred by footholes and the bird-lined barrier was still intact. Was the Injusa visit only a dream? But that night they were back, filling the holes in the bark again and gluing grass to the barrier. This time they didn't force Nama to drink. They murmured to each other as they rustled through the branches. Nama couldn't understand what they were saying, but the sound was oddly comforting. She fell into a deep sleep, and when she awoke, they were gone. Nama couldn't quite put her finger on it. She was sitting by the mukwa log, trying to shape the outside of the boat, when it came to her that something had subtly changed about the forest. The light was different. The sky remained as cloudless as ever, but the heat was even more oppressive than usual. Her body was covered with sweat that wouldn't dry. Then she realized what had happened. Buds were swelling on the branches of all the dry trees. New leaves were forcing their way out. A subtle green hue hung over the forest, and that meant the rainy season was on its way. During the dry season, many of the forest trees lost their foliage. But unlike the vines and grass, they didn't wait for the first rain to start growing again. They knew somehow that the storms were about to arrive. Nama had seen it happen before. In 2 or 3 weeks, towering clouds with swollen purple bottoms would raise out of the east. Branch crackling winds and thunder that shook the bowl of the sky would descend on the island, along with torrents of life-giving rain. She hadn't a hope of finishing the mukwa log by then. Nama was appalled. She couldn't possibly cross the lake during the storms. She would have to stay on the island until the next dry season, alone. Nama stumbled back to the platform and laid in the shade of the lucky bean canopy with her chest heaving. She wanted to cry, or scream, or throw something hard. So many emotions ran through her. She couldn't decide which one to feel. All she could do was lie there and pant. alone. The baboons returned full of complaints. Hunger and heat made them irritable. Namo watched Grumpy creep from one to another, trying to beg a grass root. They all shouted at him. He was again the scrawny bag of bones she remembered from the little island. Poor Rumpy, she thought. The high point of your life was when you knocked me down. Namo lay back on the grass of the green bag and tried to think. The grinding hunger that tormented the animals will go away when the breeding season arrived. Antelope would have young, the birds would build nests, perhaps the leopard would return to its cave. She wouldn't be able to build fires on wet days. She wouldn't be able to work on the boat, and all those months alone. But look on the bright side, she told herself. The island will be full of food, the streams will run again, and the fish traps will become usable. This year she could plant her garden at the right time, although rising lake water might make it difficult to reach the little island. By evening, Nama was almost reconciled to the situation. She munched a strip of dried kudumi and choked down some of the horrid, tasteless water lily bulbs as she made plans. She rebuilt her platforms and made a watertight shelter. The full moon rose as the sun set. It was going to be one of those restless nights with the baboons awake and the dassies foraging. Rumpy tried to climb the cliff and failed. His foot was swollen. Perhaps he had fallen on it when he tumbled out of the tree. He managed to reach a low shelf where he ensconced himself in a crack. The intrusive hasn't visited since the 2 nights after the crocodile guts left. Nama was frankly relieved. She hugged the green bag and considered telling a story to pass the time until she felt sleepy. Tell who a story, she thought sadly. Rumpy wasn't going to listen. He had cowered from her since she had thrust a burning branch in his face. She could hear him groan every now and then as he even now as he fidgeted under the bright moon. Anyhow, an animal wasn't the artist she wanted. She wanted people. Oh, fine, she thought. If I can't get through one night on my own, how am I going to do it in 3 months? Cough, cough. Her mind went blank. Cough, cough. That sound. She remembered it from the banana grove outside the village. Cough, cough. Silence. What was it doing? Was it standing under the tree? She remembered the leap the caracal had made to pluck the dassie from a rock. How high could leopards jump? Cough, cough. Farther away now, it was moving towards the cliff. Namo let her breath out carefully. The baboons were absolutely still. Not a single infant whimpered. The troop might have vanished off the face of the earth. The dassies, who had been twittering to one another, had turned to stone. The whole grassland held its breath. Then a scream. It was a terrible, wailing shriek, so much like a human that Namo had to stuff her fist into her mouth to keep from crying out. It went on in ghastly agony. From her earliest childhood, that scream came, with a memory of flowing spotted skin and rending claws, and later of Ambuya tearing out her hair when they brought mother's bones home from the forest. And then it stopped. The grasslands waited. The bright moonlight shone through the leaves, and water-laden air pressed on Namo's skin. After a while, a baboon infant whimpered. Its mother grunted softly in response. Wow, wow, called the nightjar in its breathless voice. One by one, the inhabitants of the grasslands came alive. They were no longer in any danger. The leopard had selected its prey, and they, with heartless ease, returned to their usual activities. The dassies twittered. A ground hornbill uttered its low, panting call. But something had been subtracted from the chorus of night noises. Rumpy's characteristic moans as he moved his injured foot was no longer present. Hi, Kakarot. Hello, hello. Welcome, welcome. I hope you're enjoying the story, friend. I hope you're enjoying the story. I hope you're having a nice day as well. I hope you're having a lovely day. Chapter 31. I can't stay, said Namo, looking out over the endless lake beyond the Mukwa log. She didn't know who she was talking to. The island, perhaps. If I stay, I'll go mad, or the leopard will get me. She felt it was only a matter of time. The great cat had marked Rumpy as his prey long ago. Grandmother said that if a lion or a leopard tasted someone's tears, it would never be satisfied until it got the whole person. She considered dragging the log into the water in its present state. She could sit in a hollow and float along, but it would probably flip over with her inside. Anyhow, she couldn't even budge it. Namo contemplated Crocodile Guts' boat. He said the Injutsu taught him everything he knew about the water. I wish they would do something for me. Or had they? Who taught her to swim? Who found her the island with the Portuguese grave? Who told her to hollow out the log with coals? Who slithered up and down the tree, fitting piece of wood into holes? I have been such a fool, whispered Namo. After many years, even a good boat gets cracks, Crocodile Gut had said the first time she met his spirit. I used to plug them up with sap from the mutowa tree. She turned Crocodile Guts' boat over and studied the bottom. The gap was as wide as her little finger on the inside, but it narrowed to a hairline outside. She could whittle a slice of wood to fit it, and pack it securely with mutowa sap and wild cotton fiber. It should last long enough to reach shore. Nama worked feverishly all day. She mended every defect she could find, both inside and out. She poked sticky cotton into tiny gaps with a sliver of dashi bone. She held a glowing branch next to the wood to dry the seals. She harvested all her plants from the little island, leaves, seeds, and roots, leaving nothing to replant in the rainy season. Everything depended on this last attempt. She would succeed, or she would join the Injutsu in their watery kingdom. The next morning, she said goodbye to the baboon troop. Tag scampered after a butterfly he hadn't had a hope of catching. And Donkeyberry groomed fat cheeks by the dry stream before everyone set out on their daily search for food. There was no sign that any of them missed Rumpy. Namo dragged the boat to the reeds and packed it with her stores. She had one fish trap still full of kudu meat, and a few yams and tomatoes. She was encouraged to see that the interior of the boat stayed dry as she paddled along, but to be absolutely sure, she rowed to the far end of the island and spent the night there. As the sun rose, she set out again, keeping it at her back. The island fell behind her. It was still visible at sundown, and during the night the current drifted her partway back. The second day she forged on, and by nightfall she saw land again. The forest went on, with here and there an inlet. After following the coast for several hours, Mama believed that she had reached the true shore and not another island. The dry season current was so sluggish she was able to move much more swiftly than she had in months before. She saw plumes of smoke. People were living in the forest, but she never saw them. A natural caution kept her from looking for them. They might be cannibals. Namo had been away from humans so long, she felt like a wild animal who might be hunted instead of welcomed. The days passed as she doggedly paddled along the shore. The air grew heavy with unshed rain, although the clouds still hid in Mwari's country. Sometimes she blundered into a side channel and wasted hours working her way back out. Sometimes she was so frustrated she sat in the boat and cried. But always, eventually, her spirit rebounded. Whenever she saw a mutowa tree, she went ashore to gather more sap and more wild cotton. She pulled the craft onto sandbanks and poked as much caulking as she could into the cracks. The side of the boat became unpleasantly sticky. Dirt glued itself to her legs. Now and then, thunder rolled from somewhere beyond the horizon. She saw lightning far off in the middle of the night, but no clouds. At last, Namo spotted a cluster of huts set back from the water. She studied them carefully. The heat dried her eyes so much she could hardly make anything out. As she got closer, she observed a woman squatting on the shore, beating clothes on a rock. A girl with a switch sat guard over a cluster of babies. They're exactly like her own villagers. Namo's spirit leaped. The woman shouted and pointed at her. Namo struggled to control her fear. What was wrong with her? These were people. She had braved the lake to find them. The woman stood with frank amazement as she paddled toward the land. Namo realized she must present a strange sight. Her hair had been combed since the days before she was to marry Zororo. She wore a girdle of smelly rabbit skins. She had a spear tied to her back and a panga stuck into a makeshift belt. The villagers moved away warily as she came to shore. Masikati, greetings, said Namo, clapping her hands politely. Have you spent the day well? We have done so if you have done so, said one of the women. What? Who are you? I am Namo Jangwe. I am looking for my father. He isn't here, said the woman. Is this Zimbabwe? It is that way, the woman gestured to the west. I wish you were there rather than here. Is it far? An old woman who had been sitting in the shade of a tree spoke up. You weren't thinking of going in that boat, were you? I was, Ambuyase, Namo said courteously. Let her go, let her go, mother. It's none of our business, said the young woman. She's only away from the forest, Opa, snapped the old woman. She turned to Namo. You wouldn't get far, child. The border patrol watches that part of the river like vultures. Anyhow, the Zambezi speeds up where the sorry, it's these words. I'm not used to these words. I'm having trouble pronouncing them. Anyhow, the Zambezi speeds up where the Luangwa joins the main channel. If the soldiers didn't shoot you, he would certainly send you straight to the bottom. The current would send you straight to the bottom. Mama sat down in dismay. What soldiers? Why would anyone shoot her? You could take the road, the old woman continued, but the border patrol would ask you for identity papers. Do you have any? No. The old woman nodded. Then they'd send you straight back. Why? Cried Namo. I only want to see my father. What difference does it make to them? They just will. Ask anyone if you don't believe me. Namo couldn't help it. They will. Just ask anyone if you don't believe me. You're making her cry, said Opa. Namo couldn't help it. She had battled so long to get to Zimbabwe. One more obstacle was more than she could take. She began to sob. She curled up into a ball on the ground with grief. Don't do that, exclaimed Opa. There's more than one path in the forest. Goodness, we sneak to Zimbabwe all the time. We'll tell you which way to go. Now tell me, how long has it been since you ate? You're all skin and bones. So the woman helped Namo sit up, and the girl who had been watching the babies ran off to fetch food. Soon Namo was sitting under the tree with a bowl of cold hatsa and tomato relish. It reminded her of her own village, and she burst into fresh tears. Little by little, the woman warmed the story out of her, or as much of it as Namo dared to tell. She left out the part about the Ngozi. She didn't want people thinking she was cursed. Imagine, living with baboons for months. It's no wonder you look... Opa stopped in confusion. Oh, I wasn't alone, Namo said cheerfully. I had mother and crocodile guts in the Njuzu, except I never got used to them. She halted. Everyone was staring at her again. Please excuse me, but didn't you say your mother was dead? Inquired Opa. Namo realized she had made a serious mistake. I've dreamed of her, she explained. It was alright to dream of spirits. That's how the ancestors preferred to communicate. And the Njuzu? The friendliness in the gathering had suddenly evaporated. I dreamed of them too. But Namo knew the answer was bad. Normal people didn't talk to water spirits. Only Ngangas did, or witches. The villagers were already suspicious of her weird appearance. Well, I think we should help this one on her way. Opa said briskly. The others agreed, even Opa's old mother. Namo's spirit sank. She had looked forward to a night surrounded by people, but now they wanted to get rid of her. The women gave her a small amount of mealie and took her to a road running along the far side of the village. Namo was sorry to lose the boat, but it had begun to leak badly again. If the mouth of the Luangwa River was as bad as everyone said, it wouldn't have survived anyhow. Maybe it will sink there in the lake and go to the country of the Njuzu, she thought. They could tell crocodile guts where it is. Remember, walk as far as the 3 baobab trees on the other side of the hill, shaped like a water buck's ear. Turn right on the path and follow it until you see bright lights. Don't take any other path. The soldiers put landmines along the border during the war, and most of them are still there. With that, Opa sent Namo firmly on her way. What was a border? Mama wondered as she trudged along. She had a green bag packed with mealy meal, yams and dried kudu meat, plus a few tightly stoppered calabashes of water. She had the precious dress cloth, Uncle Kufa's knife, 6 matches, 2 clay cooking pots, her weapons, and a bag of gold nuggets around her neck. Big clouds were piling up in the east. She heard a distant grumble of thunder. Grandmother said if you heard thunder without seeing lightning, it was the voices of the Injuzu celebrating the approach of rain. What was the border patrol guarding stuff so valuable? They had guns and landmines to keep children from looking for their fathers. It didn't make sense. Noel passed a hill shaped like a waterbuck's ear and found 3 baobabs. Beyond them was the path, clearly marked. The sun was just past noon as she sat by the road to take a drink of water. A strange noise came from the west. It grew louder and louder. It wasn't like the tractor she had seen at the trading post or the airplanes that she had occasionally glimpsed, although it came from the sky. Nama's nervousness increased as it approached. Wep, wep, wep. It was louder than anything she had ever encountered. She dived into the bushes as a large object swooped down the road. She had a glimpse of a whirling tail and a bulbous body full of soldiers. They had guns. They were looking for her. Nama plunged into the forest. She felt thorns tear at the green bag. Her spear caught between 2 trees and brought her to a jolting halt before she wrenched it free and kept it running. Whap, whap, whap. The thing curved around and came back. It flew in low over the trees, where Nama lay spread eagle in terror. It didn't see her. It went back of the way it came, and soon its noises faded into the normal sound of the bush. Hithla, Nama never wanted to meet another one of those. She had to rest before she gained the courage to go at him. When she sat up, she realized she wasn't on the path anymore. She was in the middle of the forest, and she had no idea where the path was. She couldn't see the hill shaped like a waterbuck's ear. The tree was too dense, and anyhow, it might look like something completely different on this side. The only thing Nama was sure of was the direction of Zimbabwe. It lay towards the setting sun. Sighing, she took stock of her belongings. The thorns had torn a large hole in the green bag. She rearranged the articles inside to allow for it. The thorns had torn a sizable rip in her, too. A seam of blood ran from her shoulder to her elbow. She had hoped it wouldn't become infected. Namo hefted the green bag to her shoulder and set off again. There was nothing else to do. She would tackle the problem of landmines when she actually reached the border. The clouds were building rapidly. The thunder was closer, and now she actually saw streaks of lightning. The birds swooped and twittered. Leaves stirred on the trees. Termites boiled out of their nests, and Namo paused briefly to have a snack. Soon she encountered a trail. She didn't know whether it was the correct one, or if it was made by people or animals, but it went in the right direction. She made much better time now. The clouds gathered overhead. Their bottoms were dark and lumpy, and Namo knew a violent storm was imminent. I wish I could have stayed in that village, she mourned. The lightning crackled down. Oh, that was close! She smelled the rain, a cool, dusty odor that sent ripples of excitement through her body, but she wished she could just find shelter. Crash! Namo flinched. A rushing sound rapidly approached through the trees. The wind suddenly whipped up the forest into a frenzy. Beyond the tossing branches she spied a hut, and farther on a wide open space. It was a dried-up marsh pocketed by the footprints of animals. In the eerie green light she saw the trails of buffalo, antelope, and elephant. Crash! The hut was abandoned. Its door was gone and the grass roof looked unreliable, but Namo had no choice. The first drops of rain were pattering down. She quickly poked around the dark floor of the hut with a long stick. There didn't seem to be any snakes. She sat against the clay wall as far from the entrance as she could manage and watched the dense sheets of water sweep past. My, this wind's starting to tear off the roof. Leaks appeared in several places, but Namo's spot stayed dry. She hooked herself against the sudden chill and watched the marsh thirstily drink up the first water of the season. Crash! The tongue of lightning came down so close it blinded her. Bushes nearby exploded with startled buffalo, who had apparently been sheltering under the wrong tree. One of them bellowed loudly and charged across the marsh with its tail tucked between its legs. It got halfway, and then, horrifyingly, the ground heaved up with a tremendous roar, louder than the thunder itself. Nama thought for an instant the creature had been struck by another bolt of lightning. Clouds of dirt flew in all directions, some of them raining on the hut. The buffalo was flung into the air. It fell back with its stomach torn in two and one leg completely severed. It flailed briefly and died with its tongue protruding from its mouth. Grandmother had described the landmines, but they were far, far worse than Nama had imagined. She had never dreamed that such destruction was possible. Now she noticed the collapsed fence running along the edge of the marsh, the wire looped under and over termite-eaten posts on the ground. I guess I found the border, said Nama between clenched teeth. She watched the water pool around the ruined body of the buffalo. She realized that she had made her own puddle on the floor of the hut when the landmine went off. I would too, I won't lie. After the fierce front of the storm had passed, the rain lessened in its intensity, then stopped entirely as the sun came out. The ground steamed as the marsh dried. It would take several more storms for the ground to soften. Nama broke open a rotted log with the panga and used the soft, dry wood inside to start the fire. She boiled a mealie meal. The food made her feel more courageous. I can't go back. I don't know the way, she said as she shoveled the hot suds into her mouth with her fingers. I can't stay here either. She rested against the side of the hut and studied the marsh. Some animals had certainly crossed the border. She could see their tracks. I could walk on the prints of an antelope, she said. Except that she didn't know how big landmines were. It might be as small as peanuts, in which case she could easily tread on one and that the antelope hoof had missed. But wait, 4 or 5 elephants had been through when the soil was soft enough to take deep imprints. The brief rain hadn't eroded those. Her foot could easily fit inside one of them. If an elephant isn't heavy enough to set off a landmine, I certainly won't do it, Nama declared. It was one thing to figure out a solution, though, and another to enter a place where she had just seen a buffalo get torn apart. Nama packed and repacked her goods. She experimented with different methods of carrying the grain bag. Finally, as the sun approached the line of the trees in the west, she couldn't think of any more excuses. Nama found the elephant trail in the forest and hopped from print to print until she reached the marsh. Then she took a deep breath and retied the bag to her back. Well, here goes, she whispered. She began the trek across the wasteland. It was easy enough to jump, but impossible to rest. Once or twice she teetered on the print and almost fell over. She passed close to the buffalo. Vultures had found it, and a few silverback jackals nipped at the birds and wriggled through the massed feathers. She was halfway across. The sun was very low now. Blue shadows streamed across the marsh. Soon the ground would be completely dark except for the glow from the sunset. Nama kept hopping. The spear came loose and clattered to the ground. She picked it up gingerly and went on. Closer and closer came the line of trees, and darker grew the wasteland. The sun had set. The silvery light was confusing. At last she came to the opposite side, and had to be extra careful as she followed the elephant footprints under the trees, though she couldn't make them out anymore. Nama sat down to rest. She wasn't safe, yet, not one bit, but she was surrounded by familiar dangers. After all her time in the bush, she found them far less unnerving than the landmines. She thought about climbing a tree to wait for dawn, but something caught her eye in the thick darkness. It was a light, a brilliant light. It was brighter than 100 cook fires. It came from the first house beyond the border of Zimbabwe. Chapter 32. Filled with wonder, Nama made her way through the forest. There were several lights attached to the roof of a large square house, and they illuminated a grassland surrounded by a fence. Nama tried to look directly at them, but they were too bright. They hurt her eyes. The grassland was lush with plants, in spite of it being only the beginning of a rainy season. We could keep a whole herd of goats in there, she thought. They would be safe, too. The fence is higher than her head and topped with spiky wire. Not even a lion could jump it. The inside of the house was lighted, too, and she could see a table. Nama's heart sped up. It wasn't just any table. It was like the one in Mother's picture, covered with cloth and dishes. Oh, it was too marvelous to be real. It was exactly like the picture. Nama saw a woman in a print dress and white apron emerge from a room in the back of the house. She was carrying a tray covered with steaming food. Norma followed her progress from window to window until she reached the table. Other people arrived with light skins, much paler than Joelle. There was a man, a woman, and 2 children. They sat down, and the first woman piled her food on the plates. Even from where Norma squatted outside the fence, she could smell the rich aroma of meat. This must be the white men grandmother had told her about. Norma thought they were fascinating. She assumed the man had 2 wives, one light, one dark. He was certainly rich enough. The dark woman had no children, but perhaps they hadn't been married long. She was obviously the junior wife since she was doing most of the work. Norma looked her way to the grassland so she could peer more closely into the window, which were open but covered by a fretwork of iron. She went around and around until she found a spot where the wire was loose at the bottom. With some work, she was able to pry it up. The gap was large enough to wriggle them through. But first she changed from the rabbit skins to the dress cloth. She had forgotten how the women at the village reacted to her. She attempted to comb her hair with her fingers, but it was too knotted. Then, inspired, she tied around her head one of the red scraps from the cloth which she was to have married Zorero. It covered most of the knots. She crawled under the fence and pulled her belongings through. She hung the grain bag from a stray wire halfway up and leaned the spear against it, but she couldn't bring herself to leave the banga behind. It had stood between her and destruction too often. She tied it to her waist. Norma saw beds and tall chests and many handles in one of the rooms. In another was an easy chair wide enough to hold 4 people. She jumped when she saw something move on the wall. It was a person who seemed to be looking out of a shadowed room. When Norma raised her hand, so did the person. Norma had encountered mirrors in the Portuguese trader's house, but this was not a reflection. It was too tall and bony. Tufts of hair stuck out from under a head rag, and the eyes stared from a face gone skeletal. If Norma had met the creature on the forest path, she would have climbed the nearest tree. There would be time enough later to figure out the picture, Norma decided. She crept along the grass on her hands and knees and rose silently to look into the room where people were eating dinner. They used knives and forks. They spoke softly in unfamiliar language. Once, when the children made a noise, the father became angry. Norma eagerly tried to identify the food on the table. She recognized margarine and white bread. She saw a bowl of red paste that grandmother had said was jam. On one of the children, a boy, stuck his fingers into it, and his older sister slapped his hand. The junior wife came out with a bowl of boiled potatoes covered with a gray sauce. Norma's stomach complained at the sight of so much food. She was afraid the sound could be heard through the window. Then the junior wife took away the plates and brought. Norma had to think hard about the word. Cake! It was covered with a yellow paste, and the father poured himself a drink from a glass bottle. By now, Norma was standing with her nose poked between the window bars. She didn't want to miss a thing. She cautiously took a deep breath to bring the heavenly odor closer, and the sound attracted the attention of the chief's wife. The woman screamed. She jumped up, dumping her cake to the floor. The children scrambled out of the chairs, and the father shouted, Vutsek. It was one of the few Shona words Norma understood. It meant go away, not the go away used for people. The word was meant for animals, and it was a terrible insult. Norma dropped below the window and scuttled away. Her feelings were hurt. She wasn't an animal, despite living with baboons for so long. But of course the man was angry because he had been spying on them. She would have to approach the house again in the right way and try to apologize. She hurried to the gap, but before she could reach it, the back door of the house slammed open and several huge black dogs bounded out. They made straight for her. She scrambled under the fence, abandoning her grain bag and spear. She heard the precious dress cloth tear and the panga rattle against the metal. Her headscarf snagged in the wire and was torn away. Panting, she came to the other side. 2 of the dogs fell upon the grain bag with snarls and flashed teeth. The man came out of the back door with a gun. He yelled at the animals, then they dropped the meat and proceeded to wriggle under the fence after Norma. She didn't wait to see what happened. She ran for her life with the bullets whizzing over her head. The dogs set up a horrible cry as they galloped on. Murder, murder, they howled. Norma ran this way and that. She didn't know where to hide. She blundered through a forest and out again. Murder, the dogs howled as they ran. Norma passed more houses where the dogs set up a clamor. She stumbled and fell, picked herself up and dashed on. The lights of the houses stabbed through the trees, making it impossible to tell where she was going, except she didn't know where she was going. Finally, gasping for air, she climbed on a hill and abruptly reached the end of the road. The hillside had collapsed. The road broke off into a deep gorge. She couldn't go any farther. She was trapped. Nana's chest heaved as she struggled to catch her breath. She saw the shadowy bodies of the dogs as they approached. She braced herself on top of the hill and waited. Suddenly, she was possessed by an intoxicating and frightening sense of power. "Who's gonna be my next meal?" she screamed, brandishing the panga. "Who's gonna sweeten my cooking pot?" The dog skidded to a halt and stared at her. "I'm so hungry. I want a fat little dog for dinner. Will it be you?" Nama thrust a panga at one of the animals. "Or you? Or you?" She advanced on the creatures, who backed away with nervous words. "Too late. You can't make friends now," snarled Nama. "I'll send my locusts to eat the hair off your backs. I'll brew your blood into beer. Who's gonna sweeten my cooking pot?" The dogs lost all their nerve and ran, except for one. He was the biggest. He launched himself at Namo, and she met him with the panga. It was as though she wasn't there. Her arms and legs moved of their own accord. Her spirit sang as she fought, and when she dropped the dog's lifeless body to the ground, she howled with purest ecstasy. All the dogs in the neighborhood went wild as Namo fled back down the road, skirted around the houses, and disappeared into the forest. She didn't know where she was going, only that she had to run, and that she didn't belong with the people who shouted "Vodsek" at her and shot her with guns. She plunged deeper and deeper into the bush until the sensation of power left her and she fell to the ground unconscious. "Who do you think gave you the panga?" said Long Teeth from her perch in the dead tree. Nama lay on the hard soil. Tsetse flies zoomed overhead. As the days passed, she had wandered on. She encountered more of them. "The Portuguese spirit," she said weakly. "Ha! He was no match for me with his Catholic spells. Forgive your enemies indeed. I say kill them all as quickly as possible." "My ancestors, the Puff Adder," remembered Namo. She was too exhausted to explain fully, but Long Teeth understood. "Your ancestors have watched over you, little disaster, but this time it was I who aided you." "You're a witch." "Nonsense! I'm just someone who let herself be pushed around. What has goodness done for you? Tossed you from one nasty situation to the next." "It's wrong to enjoy killing. It's wrong to suffer, child." Namo's spirit wondered. The hot human air of the forest buzzed with the tsetse flies. Now and then chills seized her body. She was sick, no question about it, and lost. She had staggered along trails for days. A few times she had seen houses, but the memory of the dogs came back to drive her away. She hadn't seen people for a long time. She found the remnants of a farm and gorged herself on bananas gone wild. They were unripe and made her stomach ache. A rainstorm briefly caused the streams to flow, and now she was dependent on the few pockets of water that hadn't dried up. She was hungry, thirsty, and weak, and her head thudded with pain. Worst of all was the realization that she had been possessed by the spirit of a witch. Far from leaving Long Teeth on Ninjutsu Island, she had brought her along with the panga. Witches made you do evil things without your will or even memory. No village would allow you to stay. You became an outcast. Namo shuddered as she remembered the weird ecstasy of destruction the night she had killed the dog. The dead tree was empty. Long Teeth had flown off to play someone else, but she would return. Namo was sure of it. She forced herself to stand. She knew she ought to search for food, but she couldn't keep her mind on it. How her head ached. Namo paused as another chill racked her body. The trail, which had seemed large at first, had dwindled until she couldn't find it anymore. Thunder rolled in the distance. Rain would keep her alive a while. It had already caused new grass to spring up. Soon the forest would be full of things to eat, but Namo doubted she would survive long enough to appreciate them. She heard a strange humming in the distance. It was like a giant hive of bees. She wouldn't be able to smoke them out. Her 5 remaining matches had perished at the same time as they could do meat. Perhaps she could use a long stick to fish out the honey. Namo staggered on. The humming came from an odd structure on the hill. As she drew near, she saw the door in the side of the hill, and from the opening came a rumbling sound and the lowing of cattle. Mama stopped to clear her head. She had trouble focusing. The strange object was like a hut, but the sides were like finely woven cloth. She could see inside. It was full of tsetse flies. Mama shook her head again. She must be dreaming. Tsetse didn't live in hives. The flies were zipping into openings at the bottom, but they couldn't get out again. So many of them clustered on that screen that their buzzing made her ears ring. She stood bemused until the pain in her head forced her on. She peered into the door in the side of the hill. A breeze laden with the rich odor of livestock blew against her face. It was dark inside. The floor beyond the opening sloped down to a central chamber. Beyond lay another door filled with something that whirled around and round, and was the source of the breeze. In the central chamber there was a pen containing many cattle and a few goats. Mama suddenly understood where she was. She had arrived at the underground country where the broken and thrown-away creatures lived. She made her way down the slope. Cattle stirred uneasily as she approached. "Oh, beautiful cows," she whispered, running her hands over their warm hides. Among them were 2 nanny goats with swollen udders. Mama backed one against the fence and, ignoring its angry protest, helped herself to the milk. She drank until she began to feel sick again. Then she lay down at the feet of the milling herd and fell asleep. Her spirit wandered in confused dreams. The voices of the underground people muttered as they lifted her. They carried her along a path with branches and rushing past overhead. A silvery gray twilight soothed her burning skin. Presently, she was in a room with white walls where a woman sat reading a book by a window. Nama opened her eyes wide to make out the figure. It was Mother. I think I'm going to leave it there for right now. I'm going to leave it for right now. I mean, we only have a few more chapters, so maybe I should be... No, I'm going to finish it, because we're literally right at the end, so I'm going to finish it for right now. Hope you guys don't mind. It'll be a little bit longer of a story time, because we only have a few more chapters. So, let's finish it up. Chapter 33. "I am not your mother," the woman said crossly. Nama sank into happy oblivion again. If Mother wanted to disagree, that was her business. She was not mistaken about the braided hair decorated with beads. She recognized the flowered dress. They were exactly like the photograph. Nama dozed, woke to be fed, and dozed again. Never had she been so contented. After a while, an old man dressed in a white robe sat by her bed and murmured charms. "Are you my grandfather?" she asked. The old man looked startled. She snuggled into the bed, which was softer than anything she had ever known. A woman's spirit stuck a thorn into her arm. It hurt, but Nama accepted it as a part of the strange rituals of the spirit world. Then the old man was back with a black book, which he read with his lips moving. "Oh, grandfather, I'm glad to see you," Nama murmured. "Ambu said I would meet you someday. Did you know that Mother can read? She is so clever. Is Aunt Shulai here? I miss her." "Shh, you must rest," said the old man. Nama obediently went back to sleep. She talked to Mother, sharing with her things that had happened since the picture was destroyed. "Poor Rumpy. He never had any luck," she sighed. "I wonder whether he was really a human who had eaten his totem. Do you know?" "He was only a baboon," said Mother firmly. Gradually, Nama became more aware of her surroundings. This woman's spirit was called Sister Gladys. She was kept busy mixing things up in bottles and writing in a book. She was very respectful to Mother. The old man was called Baba Joseph, and he often came to talk. She didn't understand half of what he said, but it didn't matter. His voice was very soothing. And gradually she became aware that she wasn't dead at all, and that Baba Joseph wasn't her grandfather, but she stubbornly refused to give up on Mother. Other people might call her Dr. Everchoice Asuko. Namo knew differently. She was so sleepy. It was all she could do to keep her eyes open more than a minute. She laid in a soft bed, and now and then drifted off into dreams. "What's wrong with her?" said an unfamiliar man's voice. "What isn't wrong with her? Malaria? Bilharzia? Malnutrition?" said Mother. "When I picked her up, I could have sworn her bones were hollowed. Her feet are scarred. That's an old burn. You should feel the soles. They're like hooves." "How long was she out there?" the man asked. "Months. She keeps raving about water spirits and a dead boatman, and a baboon she thinks was human." The woman sat next to the bed. Namo could smell the soap she used. "Is she insane?" "Insane?" Namo was insulted. "She was alone an awfully long time," said Mother. Namo opened her eyes to protest when she saw the man. He was an enormous white man with a bristling beard. His arm was as big as her waist. "No!" she yelled, scrambling out of bed. She fell to the floor with the sheet wrapped around her and tried to crawl away on her hands and knees. "Stop that!" Mother cried. She hauled Namo back. "No, no, no!" "She doesn't seem to like you, Hendrik," Mother said as Namo tried to squirm out of her grasp. The white man shrugged. "At least she doesn't think I'm her mommy." He lumbered out of the room, and Namo's breathing became regular again. "Why are you so afraid of Dr. Van Heerden?" Mother asked. Namo told her about the man with the dogs and the gun. She didn't mention Longteeth or killing the dog, however. She didn't want to be accused of the witch. "That's terrible. You probably don't know this, but not long ago we had a civil war here. White people against black. Some of the hatred is still around. I wish I knew the man's name. I'd set the police on him." "How could he hate black people when his junior wife was black?" Namo asked logically. She described the house and the wonderful dinner. Mother laughed. "Englishmen aren't allowed more than one wife, and anyhow, they are almost always married Englishmen. That was a servant." "Is Dr. Van Heerden English, Mai?" "Don't call me Mai. I'm not your mother." "Yes, Dr. Masuko. Dr. Van Heerden is Afrikaans. It's a different kind of white person. He doesn't like to be bothered by children, so stay out of his way." "Yes, my Dr. Masuko." After a few days, Namo was allowed out of bed. She was given a new dress cloth because the old one was torn and fouled with dog blood. Sister Gladys had burnt it. Namo's bag of gold nuggets had disappeared during the period when she believed herself dead. She was afraid to complain. Dr. Van Heerden must have taken it to pay for my supplies, she decided. She was delighted with the new cloth, though. It was green and red with a pattern of jungle, or roosters. "That's my name," she told Sister Gladys proudly. Namo went to the long mirror at the end of the hospital corridor to admire herself. She stood there a long time. Then she folded up on the floor and bursted into tears. "Now what?" said Sister Gladys. I'm so ugly," Namo hiccuped. The creature she had seen in the Englishman's house wasn't a moving picture at all. It was her. She looked like a wall spider with a burr stuck to its head. "You're only thin," the nurse said kindly. Anyhow, Baba Joseph said that the important thing is the soul. This did not make Namo feel any better. As soon as she was strong enough, Namo volunteered to help. Sister Gladys was pleased to have someone to scrub the floors. She taught Namo how to make beds and how to use the electric stove to prepare salsa. Namo was enchanted by the stove. No more collecting firewood. No more worrying about leopards creeping up on her in the forest. She loved electricity. It was made by something Sister Gladys called a generator. Dr. Van Heerden fed it a kind of smelly liquid, and it hummed away as it made the lights shine and the stove hot. Late at night, the generator was turned off, and then they had to use lamps like the one Joel had at the trading post. Namo quickly saw that she had landed in a very strange village. It was called the Fifi, and it was stuck in the middle of a wilderness. There was vegetable gardens and cattle and goat pens and fields of lucerne for the animals. There were the usual huts and greeneries, but along with them were large buildings devoted to what Mother, Dr. Masuku, Nama reminded himself, called science. Nama learned new words every day. Science was the kind of work people did in the Fifi. It consisted of catching and destroying tsetse flies. Tsetse flies carried a sickness that killed cattle, horses, pigs, goats, and donkeys. The livestock at a Fifi had to be given medicine every few weeks or they could die. Normally, no one had kept domestic animals in such a lethal place, but the creatures had a very special purpose. They were bait. Every day they were driven into the underground chamber Nama had seen, and a huge fan blew their smell through the forest. Tsetse flies come from miles around. They land in the trap, crawl inside, and find something to bite if they couldn't get out again. Dr. Van Heerden brought live insects back to his science house, which Nama had learned was called a laboratory. There he let them bite animals that had been painted with poison. The white man was also trying to put the smell of cattle into a bottle. He wanted to bait traps all over the forest. Everyone at Fifi had something to do with science. Dr. Masuku was looking for a disease to make tsetse sick. Normal was made to learn that flies could get sick just like people. Baba Joseph was in charge of the animal buildings. He cared for the herd of guinea pigs, which resembled small dassies. The guinea pigs squealed shrilly when he brought them food. After a few days he let Namo feed them too. She covered her ears and the little creatures screamed out of their smelly pens, but she was charmed by the confident way they nibbled lucerne from her hands. Baba Joseph had several pets: a Dukir antelope, a bush baby, a large tortoise, and an enormous warthog that waddled after him, begging for treats. Namo realized that the old man was a very great Nganga. He could get wild animals to obey him. He was also in charge of a small crocodile Dr. Van Heerden insisted on keeping. Neither Namo nor Baba Joseph liked the crocodile. It eyed them in the most calculating way, and once, when Namo teased it with a stick, it rose up with its yellow mouth opened wider than she had dreamed possible. She clawed herself halfway up the wall. Baba Joseph laughed so hard he had to sit down and wipe his face. Other people in the Fifi concerned themselves with farming, herding, and carpentry. 2 men were detailed to drive away an elephant that liked to raid the fields. Every night they patrolled, calling out, "Iwe, Hamba, hey you, get away." The elephants were well aware that no one was allowed to shoot him. He went where he pleased, and the only thing that could move him was the large firecrackers meant to burn his feet. They had to be extra careful, Baba Joseph said, because it was never certain whether the elephant was going to run away from them or towards them. Sister Gladys took care of the inevitable accidents. The one thing a Fifi did not contain was children, and there were almost no women. Everyone had another home where he kept his family, which he visited regularly. Nana thought this was a strange arrangement, but Mother explained that a Fifi wasn't a healthy place for children. Chapter 34. Nama worked steadily for whoever would allow her to help. She walked a fine line between staying invisible, no one would notice her and send her away, and being useful. They would think she was valuable enough to keep. She was determined to live at a Fifi, if only to feast her eyes as often as possible on Mother. Dr. Masuku, for her part, was often impatient with her little shadow that she acquired. "Go haunt someone else," she would cry. "You hang around like a tsetse fly." And Nama would fade away, only to reappear later when she thought Mother wasn't looking. Nama observed Dr. Van Heerden as he picked up dead flies with a pair of tweezers and put them in the bottles. She was a little afraid of him. He was so big and hairy. His legs were like tree trunks, and nestled in the top of one of his long socks was a comb. Nama wondered if he used it to comb his legs. Dr. Van Heerden warned her not to make any noise or touch anything or get in his way. Once she had satisfied these conditions, though, he was willing to let her watch. In fact, he became so absorbed he often forgot about her altogether. If he was feeling sociable, he called her his wild child and insisted that she had been raised by jackals. "I saw your brothers near the goat pen, wild child. Tell them I'll make a rugged of them if they get any ideas." Namo explained gently that she came from a proper village full of people. "We'll see what happens when the full moon arrives. I'll bet you'll be running through the forest with your tongue hanging out." There was no shaking him. She knew he was trying to be funny, so she didn't take any offense. When Dr. Van Heerden's work went badly, his beard fluffed out like fat cheeks of mane. What are you smiling at? He grumbled, peering over his bottles. I am happy, said Mama. Go be happy somewhere else, wild child. The only person who never chased her away was Baba Joseph. He was as stern as an elder should be, but always welcoming. The fate of the old man's guinea pigs upset her, though. Dr. Van Heerden painted them with poison and put them under a little wire basket. The baskets fitted so tightly the animals could hardly wriggle, as the cages, as the septic thighs were placed all over them. They would yelp and cry as they were bitten. The septic swelled up with blood until they looked ready to burst. It made Mama sick. It's cruel, agreed Baba Joseph, but one day the things we learn will keep our cattle from dying. He stuck his own arm into his septic cage. Namo covered her mouth to keep up from crying. The flies settled all over the old man's skin and began swelling up. I do this to learn what the guinea pigs are suffering, he explained. It's wicked to cause pain, but if I share it, God may forgive me. Baba Joseph talked a lot about God. He and a number of the other villagers dressed in all white on Saturdays. The men shaved their heads and carried long wooden poles with a crook on top. The women wore white head scarves. They met in the forest on Saturday afternoons to sing and pray. Baba Joseph was their leader. Excuse me, Baba, are you Catholic? Namo asked him. Catholic? Whatever gave you that idea? The old man was affronted, and Namo was too overcome with embarrassment to say anything else. There is more than one kind of Christian, Sister Gladys explained. Baba Joseph is a Vapo story. Those people don't believe in medicine. If they get sick, they'd rather die than take a pill. I think they're idiots. Whatever their opinion of Vapo stories, everyone deferred to Baba Joseph, even Dr. Van Heerden. The old man looks at you with those luminous eyes, the Afrikaners told Mother, and you find yourself saying, Yes, Baba. Do you want me to stand on my head with a flower at my stars? You got it, Baba. In the evening, the doctor sat outside his hut and drank beer. It wasn't the stuff the villagers brewed. It came in brown bottles, just like the beer Joel had given grandmother long ago. Dr. Van Heerden drank 7 or 8, and then sweat poured from off of him like a river. At such times, he let Namo lurk in the bushes while he talked to visitors. It was a lot like the men's dare, although Mother and Sister Gladys sometimes attended, and Namo learned that a great deal from the conversations. Unlike her own village, Ififi was a mixture of Shona, Tonga, and Matabele, with one Afrikaner thrown in. The language was generally Shona, but smatterings of other tongues cropped up when people became excited. Dr. Masuku was Matabele. At first this bothered Namo. She had been taught that the Matabele, traditional enemies of her people, were as cruel as hyenas, but she couldn't imagine Mother doing anything bad. She knew it didn't make sense that she, a Shona child, had a Matabele mother. Mother wasn't married either, and never intended to be. It's just another name for slavery, she declared. Namo thought this was astounding. How can you become an ancestor if you didn't have children? How could you become anything without a husband? Mother insisted that marriage was the worst thing that could happen to an intelligent woman. She and Dr. Van Heerden argued about it frequently. What you need is a nest of little babies, Everjoyce, the Afrikaner would announce after his 4th beer. I could see them chirping, Mama, Mama. You go all soft and like a pat of butter. You've got motherhood written all over you. I'd rather swim through a pool of starving crocodiles, Mother said. Even the wild child knows, said Dr. Van Heerden. Dr. Van Heerden held out a bottle of beer against his face to cool off. She follows you like a little shadow. The wild child has imprinted on me, of the first thing she saw after her ordeal in the forest. Mama didn't know what imprinting was, and she didn't bother her head about it. Her spirit told her Mother's true identity. That's all that mattered. Her life drifted on in an aimless fashion. She knew she ought to ask about nuns. She knew it was important to locate Father, but she couldn't bring herself to leave Mother. Sometimes when she was washing sheets at the hospital or gathering vegetables for the guinea pigs, a great craving came over her. She carefully put down her works and trotted off to the laboratories. Ah, there was Mother with her eye pressed to a metal tube called a microscope. Namo would watch her for a while, suffused with happiness. Dr. Masuku would eventually look up and say, Stop sneaking up on me. You'll make me break a slide. Little by little, Namo took over Baba Joseph's chores. He is grateful to let her handle things that had become difficult for his old body. He watched her carefully and instructed her in new duties. What? that scared me. Hold on, let me go check that out. I swear, these spam calls get worse and worse every day. Stupid spam calls. Blech. Anyhow. What was I doing? Little by little, Nama took over Baba Joseph's chores. He was grateful to let her handle the things that had become difficult for his old body. He watched her carefully and instructed her in new duties when he thought she was ready. She worked willingly, even feeding the warthog, which snorted alarmingly when she approached. The only animal she could not bring herself to care for was the crocodile. It was given an occasional fish and the bodies of the guinea pigs when they died. She was particularly helpful on Saturdays. Saturdays were all sacred to the Vepo story. They weren't allowed to work at all. They weren't allowed to work all day. Baba Joseph always worried that he had not left enough food and water for his animals, but now he could relax. Nama looked after everything except the crocodile. It can dry up like an old cow patty for all I care, she thought privately. When she finished, she helped Sister Gladys, and then she hurried to the forest to spy on the Vepo story. They spent the afternoons in a clearing. The men sat on one side and the women on the other with an aisle between. One or another of the worshippers would stand and begin singing. Quise, quise. Tino vona, vahu, hambat viti, Christu. Everywhere, everywhere, you see people who do not know Christ. This was, Nama learned, the call for the angels to come down from Maury's country and hover over the gathering. She had asked Baba Joseph if angels were the same as ancestral spirits. It had been vague about it. Next, the Bible story knelt in the direction of the rising sun and extended their arms with palms forward. Maury save Africa, Alleluia. Hear our prayers. Maury Father, Jesus bless us. Nama understood why no one would pray to Maury and one's father, but Jesus was an Ngozi. She didn't think it was at all wise to attract his attention. Sometimes Baba Joseph would pace the aisle between the men and women and tell them stories or scold them if they hadn't been good. He warned them about drinking or taking other men's wives. Doing these things is like making a telephone call to Satan, he cried. The others would echo his words or make their voices sound like drums or musical instruments to back up his sermon, although the Vepo story used no actual instruments in their ceremonies. The whole thing was extremely pleasant to listen to. After a while, Nama left to check up on the animals. She lifted the tortoise from his pen and let it lumber across the animal house for exercise. You mustn't drink alcohol or take another's wives, she commanded the guinea pigs who watched her hopefully for vegetables. I won't warn you about making phone calls to Satan, she told the crocodile. I'm sure you've done it many times. Nama sat with her back against the Dukir stall and surveyed her kingdom. She hadn't told the story for a long time, not since Mother's picture had burnt up. She'd been too absorbed in watching Dr. Van Heerden's beard fluff out like fat cheeks in Maine, or with the warthog trailing after Baba Joseph. Besides, if Nama wanted to talk, Mother was easy to find, although often unwilling to listen. Now Nama's spirit moved with the desire to speak. She paced between the cages as Baba Joseph did between the men and women on the Vepo story. Once upon a time, there were 3 kings who went to Maury and asked for the ceremonial stone that brings rain when it's needed, said Nama. They lived in the Maury's country, so I think they were probably angels. Anyhow, she said, stroking the Dukir, which confidently thrust her nose at her. Maury refused them, saying, I cannot give this stone to you because only your people would prosper. Rain is for everyone. The kings became angry and said, we thought you were God, but it seems you are only fooling us. We don't believe you have any power. We won't obey you any longer. Maury said, I will give each a sign so that you may know that I am God. He told the first king, you will die because your fingers will drop off. I give you the disease called leprosy. To the second king, he said. You will die because you will fall into a fire. I give you epilepsy. And to the third king, he said, you will die because your flesh will be consumed. I give you tuberculosis. Then Mori cast him out of his country. The first king washed himself in a river and sacrificed a goat. His disease, leprosy, transferred itself to the goat, which was devoured by a crocodile. Since that time, crocodiles have been able to give leprosy to humans. The second king put his spittle on the wings of a Namaqualan dove. Ever since then, the dove has been able to give epilepsy to humans. The third king breathed on a basket of wheat. His disease blew away with the chaff. That's why wheat chaff is able to give people tuberculosis. Nama retrieved the tortoise, which had wedged itself between two guinea pig pens. She pointed in the opposite direction and gave it a trail of lettuce to leaves to follow. I hope Baba Joseph never touches that ugly crocodile, she said as she dangled a sprig of lucerne over the guinea pigs to see if it'll make them stand on their hind legs. I'm sure it's loaded with leprosy. In the far distance, she heard the voices of the Bostari. They were really getting into it. Sometimes they got so carried away they didn't even use words. They yodeled at any strange thing as loud as they could, and the next day everyone came to work with a sore throat. Chapter 35. I'm off to Harare tomorrow, Dr. Van Heerden told Mother as the sun settled behind the gray-green trees of the forest and a soft dusk stole out of the east. The doctors and about 10 villagers, all men, were seated companionably outside Dr. Van Heerden's hut. There was no room for such a crowd inside, and besides, it was too hot. Nama was hidden by the leaves of a bougainvillea thorn the Afrikaner had grown over a frame at the side. It cast a welcoming shade against the hut in the afternoon and formed convenient enough for someone who did not wish to be noticed. Dr. Van Heerden gave Nama a bottle of orange soda from the refrigerator earlier, but by now had forgotten about her existence. She spun out the pleasure of the cold drink as long as possible. She pressed it against her face and let the juice slide down her throat to make her cool from the inside. Now all she has left are the few sugary drops. She applied them to her tongue, one by one. I'm taking Petrus, the doctor named one of the villagers. He needs to spend time with his family. I heard the wife has a new baby. And Petrus hasn't been home for a year, added one of the other men. Petrus casually knocked the man's stool over. He wasn't angry, so Nama knew it wasn't a real argument. She sometimes had trouble understanding jokes at Afifi. No one in her village would have made such an accusation lightly. Bring us magazines, said Mother. The reading season had kept the road too marshy to use for many weeks. All the old magazines had fallen apart. Whenever Dr. Van Heerden went to town, everyone made out a list of requests. His Land Rover returned as loaded as a tractor that visited the trading post. I'm making 2 quick trips if the weather stays good. I'm taking in bottles of cow's smell to be analyzed. Nama had watched the doctors try to collect the exact substance that attracted the senses. Nothing was overlooked. The breath, the sweat, the droppings. The last item was the most interesting. It had to be collected absolutely fresh before it hit the ground. Dr. Van Heerden crept up on a likely cow, bottle in hand. Sometimes he got what he wanted, and sometimes he got a surprise. Once a cow coughed as he was peering up its backside, with entertaining results. I think I'll bring Blixen back for a few days. We can hunt jackals together. Who's Blixen? Thought Namo. She hadn't heard of him. This place is bad for his health, Mother pointed out. A few days won't hurt. The old fellow needs a vacation. Blixen must have been an elder relative, Namo decided. Perhaps. Blixen must be an elder relative, Namo decided. Perhaps he was Dr. Van Heerden's uncle. Someday we have to send the wild child off, you know, Mother remarked. It isn't fair to keep her without an education. Namo's throat suddenly closed up. Mother said that? Mother wanted to get rid of her? She's learning plenty, said Dr. Van Heerden. Works harder than 5 of these buggers. He was into his 5th or 6th beer. The men rolled their eyes. You know what I mean. She can't read or add. She's totally unsuited for modern life. And she's bright enough to take advantage of good schooling. In fact, she's brilliant. Nama's heart burned within her. Mother's praise meant nothing. She wanted to get rid of her. Baba Joseph can teach her, said Dr. Van Heerden. Dr. Van Heerden tipped the bottle up over his red, sweaty face. Baba Joseph, Mother sounded exasperated. He'd teach her to speak in tongues. Besides, he doesn't have time. And neither does Sister Gladys, and neither do I. So don't ask. You'd make such a wonderful mother, Dr. Van Heerden said sentimentally. Namo needs a proper school and a real family. She says she has a father in Toro Shunga. The old man is very attached to her. Petrus offered an opinion for the first time. Everyone knew that the old man was Baba Joseph. She called him grandfather when she was sick. He lost a granddaughter years ago, and Namo reminds him of her. Oh brother, just what I need. Another one of Baba Joseph's pets. Groaned Dr. Van Heerden. Pets? So that's what they thought of her? Namo's skin was hot with shame. She was just another warhog trailing around after the old man. Alright, I'll think about it. The doctor came to a decision. I'll go through Ntoro Shanga on my way to Harare. If I can scare up the wild child's daddy, I'll take her back with me in Blixen. If not, well, there's always boarding school. The government makes grants for orphans. The men and Dr. Matsuku, not Mother, Namo thought angrily, went on to other topics. That night, she ground her teeth as she laid on the cot at the hospital. Sister Gladys had pronounced her the night watchman and gave her the duty of calling for help if anyone became especially ill. But she was not a white night watchman, only an ugly warhog allowed to sleep in a human bed as a joke. In the morning, she hid when Dr. Van Heerden and Petrus drove off. She didn't look at Mother, not once, and she obeyed Sister Gladys with such a stony silence the nurse asked if she felt sick. But Namo couldn't be angry at Baba Joseph. She reminded him of his dead granddaughter. That means he thought he was human. I'll never smoke cigarettes or eat pork or birds with webbed feet, she murmured as she swabbed out the guinea pig cages. She had paid close attention to the things Baba Joseph considered sinful. And I'll never make phone calls to Satan. Satan, the old man had explained, was an ngozi and witch rolled into one. He waited around for people to get careless. The minute they let their guard down, boom, he possessed them. I'll be good, and Baba Joseph will tell everyone to leave me alone. Namo wiped tears from her eyes as the guinea pigs gathered around her with ear-splitting squeals. She had avoided Dr. Masuku so completely during the next few days that the Matabele woman, she was that now, not Mother, tracked her down in the hospital. I never thought I'd miss your beady eyes on the back of my neck. What's the matter with you, Namo? Why don't you spy on me anymore? Because you wanted to send me away, thought Namo. But she replied, I've been busy. Of course you have. Sister Gladys says she doesn't know what she'd do without you. Borrow the warthog from Baba Joseph, I expect, thought Namo, but she said, I'm glad Sister Gladys is pleased with my work. You're acting so... Oh, I don't know. You seem angry. Has anyone upset you? I know it's difficult trying to fit in a strange village without any children. If I can do anything, Dr. Masuku trailed off uncertainly. Namo stared straight ahead. Not insultingly, but not in a friendly way either. Dr. Masuku looked at Sister Gladys for help. It's probably her period coming on, Sister Gladys offered. That makes young girls nervous, Dr. Masuku said gratefully. It took me forever to settle down. I think the whole process of menstruation is a joke played by God on women. Nothing she said could coax a smile out of Namo. Dr. Masuku eventually went back to her duties, and Sister Gladys gave Namo a herbal drink that said, oh God, words are getting hard now, that she said would make the pains better. The only one who could lift her bad spirits was Baba Joseph. He went about his chores in the same tranquil way, with a kind of word for each of his pets and apologies to the guinea pigs when they had to be strapped under the wire cages. He and she had always had lunch by the livestock pens. As long as Dr. Van Heerden was away, the cows didn't have to spend the day in the underground chamber. The windows of the building were securely screened, though. Even once a tsetse fly bite could prove fatal. As it was, the poor animals had to be given injections to treat animal sleeping sickness every few weeks. It always rests my eyes to see a fine cattle herd, Baba Joseph said. Namo nodded. She loved their sleek brown hides and lucerne sweet breath. The old man told her about how Jesus Ngozi had slept in a cow's feeding trough when he was a baby. Namo, in her turn, related one of the Amboya stories. Once upon a time, there was a couple with many cattle, but only one son. Their neighbors became jealous, so they hired a witch to put a curse on them. Baba Joseph frowned, not entirely pleased with a tale about a witch. Their parents became very sick, Namo went on hastily. Just before they died, they told the boy to sell all the cows and move far away. But first he was to kill the black bull and travel inside its skin. The boy was mystified by the commandment. Still he obeyed his parents. He killed the black bull and took out his intestines and moved himself within his belongings in his belly. At once the bull began to walk. What a strange thing, cried the boy. Baba Joseph was definitely uneasy about pagan magic, but he was too interested in the story to object. Namo continued. The bull walked and went through the forest and swam rivers with the boy inside. Finally, it reached the court of a king. "Oh, great king, may I stay with you?" said the boy from inside the bull's belly. The king was frightened. "Get out of here, you demon," he shouted. "Whoever heard of a talking bull?" The boy went on to an old woman's hut. "Respected grandmother, may I stay with you?" he asked. "What luck! A beautiful black bull," she cried. "You can stay with my cows as long as you like." Every morning the bull led the cows to pasture. The boy came out of the bull's belly and played on a flute to pass the time. When he played, the rain fell over the old woman's fields, even though everywhere else was having a drought. Mealies and pumpkins grew everywhere. Her cows all gave birth to calves, and their udders were so full of milk the old woman didn't know where to put it all. The people around began to notice how prosperous the old woman had become. The children spied on the pasture and saw the boy come out of the bull's belly every day. When he plays, the rain falls, they told the astonished parents. The parents went at once to tell the king. The king sent his soldiers to take away the bull, but it tossed them on his horns. "You turned me away when I asked," it bellowed. "Now your fields can all turn to ash for all I care." When the people saw this, they threw out the old king and put the boy in his place. He became very powerful and eventually had many wives and children. He built a fine new house for the old woman, but the boy's father called the black bull away to the spirit world. Ever since, when a parent dies, a cow or bull is given in the person's name and sacrificed when the spirit is brought home again. Baba Joseph sighed. "You tell a fine story, Namo," he said, "but you haven't learned the truth yet. All these old beliefs are wrong. Only Jesus matters, and our future in heaven." Namo said nothing. She had her own private opinions. Who had protected her on the lake Kaborabasa? Who had taught her how to swim and use boats? As much as she wanted Baba Joseph's approval, she couldn't ignore the evidence of her own eyes. Crocodile guts, Yunjuzu, and Mother had been with her when she needed them most, and she couldn't turn her back on them now. At the thought of Mother, Namo's spirit sank again. Baba Joseph, perhaps noticing, sent her to work feeding a young calf that was learning to do so without its mother's milk. Namo was returning from the lucerne fields. She had been gathering food for the guinea pigs, but had been distracted by a black wasp that was running. You know what? I think I might actually stop here. I'm getting super tired and hungry, but we're only a few chapters away from the end. And I think next week, not only will I finish it, but we can also read some more short stories. I think I was just a little too ambitious today. So I'm gonna go have some lunch. I'm gonna, get some rest. We'll definitely pick up the story next week, and maybe some other shorter stories too. Hell, maybe I'll even read one of my own short stories for you guys. I have a couple that I've written from the past, since we talked about story reading last stream. So I think we'll take a break for right now. But thank you all so much for being here. Thanks so much for hanging out with me. I will see you guys on Thursday for the art stream. And if you haven't yet, make sure to put in your submissions for your weird Pokemon fusions on my Twitter in the pinned comment on my profile. And of course on Discord if you're a member of my Discord. Put as many as you like. I will look at all of them and I will pick my favorites. Flood my channel with Pokemon fusions. I want to see them all. And I'll be seeing you guys tomorrow. So remember, hug your friends, tell someone you love them, and be a force for good in the world because goodness knows the world needs more goodness. I love you guys so very, very, very much, and I will see you guys on Thursday. Take care, guys. Love y'all. I'll be seeing y'all. Bye.